My name is Philip Hackett and I'm chairing the meeting. To my left is my Vice Chair Janet. Item 1, welcome apologies. Apologies, Janet. Thank you. Declarations of interest is item 2. If anybody has a declarable interest, could they make that declaration at the time that the interest is discussed and to declare the nature of that interest, please? Minutes of the last meeting, actions and matters arising. Would you like to go through those?
Yeah,
you haven't got the actions.
No, I think Jim's got it.
Right. Okay. I'll take the minutes first. Does anybody have a comment on page 1?
Yes. I just wondered if Dorset Council had anything to report on the Piddle Path, which we had the presentation on at the last meeting. Is Dave Ackley here? We're expecting Dave Ackley, but to represent the Green Space team, yeah, who might have, should have an update. Yes. So if we can just wait till he arrives, I think that would be good.
Okay. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5.
Yeah, bottom of page 5, the access land, which there's been the excellent report by Jim and his team on access land, which we approved at the last meeting. I just wanted to check with Dorset Council that is being taken into account in the ROIC. Yeah, it is. I'll show you that in my presentation later. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that one.
Page 6.
Sorry, I just wrote down things that I've got questions about, but I think maybe you've already discussed this with the chairman. Were you able to discover anything about what happened with the monkey jump response? Yes, I have. So I've been able to find an email of the response that went to, can't remember who it was now, but the response was sent off, so we know that. Right. And now I just need to see if we've had a response back, but I haven't been able to find that yet. I think it's probably National Highway. Yeah, it is National Highway. Yeah. So it's just I now have access to the emails, which I've only just had. Yeah. So I quickly looked at that, but it is on my list to take them back, and I'll report back. Thank you.
Okay. We're up to page 7.
Yeah, sorry. I just went through it and made a list of all the things I had queries about or something to report. Having a planning working group was very much an initiative that came from Tara, and I did at the last meeting produce a paper about how I thought it might work in practice. I think with Tara's departure it becomes a little bit more difficult because she was being notified of major planning applications. So what I propose as a way to take this forward is I happen to receive all planning applications which are referred to the rangers, wearing my Ramblers hat. So I think that if I receive in that context planning applications which appear significant, so more than 10 dwellings or anything else at a large scale, I will come to refer those to the left via email as they arise. Yeah, and just to let you know, that work hasn't stopped for Dorset Council, but it is just being picked by Graham's team. Yeah. Graham Stanley, who's the Green Space manager, the senior rangers who used to look at the smaller things, but actually going to look at the big things. Right. And the ROIC will help that. Thank you.
Right, we're on page 8 now. So,
oh, sorry, the access at Wild Woodbury. Nobody came back to me and said that they would be interested in a visit. So I haven't taken the offer up yet. The offer remains. If anybody from the ROIC would like to go on a site visit to Wild Woodbury, which is the Dorset Wildlife Trust rewilding initiative, please let me know, and I've got a contact there and set that up. Chris, you would. Right, okay, thank you.
Right, so I'm happy to move from the chair. That's the full and accurate recording of the last meeting. Do I have a seconder, please? Chris, all those in favour? That is unanimous. I don't believe there's any comments coming in from the screen. No comments from the screen. So,
all right. Yeah, sorry, Jim here, also in favour. Apologies, I was trying to write it in the forum. Sorry to shout out.
Okay, so unless I hear to the contrary, we'll call that unanimous on the screen. Okay, thank you very much indeed. So we'll now move to the action list. I don't have an action list in front. You can share it for me. Okay. Would you like to go down it, Bridget?
I don't have it. Want to read them out in the agenda? That'd be
from July 1st. You chase this.
Pick up the please.
Sorry, the first one is for Vanessa Penny. Resourcing with the priorities and ready or Philip, who's coming to the manager.
We're still working on that, but I'm raising issues piecemeal to the team.
Next one was the practice for diversity. This is
don't know whether that was received, although we, after meeting with Philip and Janet, there were we did put together what we would, what the lab would like to see. So we have that back. Hopefully, if Dave turns up, we'll have
Okay.
that. But Ray will be a regular at the meeting.
next one is from Janet.
We would like, I've been requesting through freedom of information requests, and I don't think the chair of the lab should need to make these requests that formally, that we have the policy that the council are using. I've since been made aware that the council doesn't have one. I'll be taking up with the multi-use presentation in item 4, because to not have a policy seems to be a fundamental mistake when you have new routes coming online, when other councils do have them. Okay, so we will leave that for later on this morning.
The next item is to deal up number here.
Gemma, can you speak up? I don't hear you.
The next one is to send any evidence of a need for Pegasus funding or other enhancement.
So Bridget, are you taking?
Yeah, I'll take that. But
yeah, I'll just have to look through the emails to see if anybody did send that. So if there's anybody waiting to send stuff, then please send it through.
Yeah, well, I guess it's really since the submission has gone to National Highways, that's probably water under the bridge. But I did send her some stuff about the active diversion order, which is on the approach on the A35 approach to Monkey Jump. So she did have that and know about it. So presumably that went in.
Yes, I assume so. And I'll just have to file everything and then get what information I've got back to you guys.
Just from our point, sort of jump in on that one. So just, well, not so fall under us, but if we're nudging them on things and push buttons, then we know about it.
I'll send the response that went to National Highways. So we work together.
Unfortunately, we had one last week.
And then the final one is for the ELAC work programme to be updated and action.
Right, we'll now move on to item 4, which is the multi-user routes presentation. And I'd like to welcome Wayne to the meeting this morning, and over to you.
Very much. Morning, everyone. Yeah, I've been asked to come and present today. I think initially I'll start off just by introducing myself, my team, what we do, what our priorities are, how we link in with other teams within the council. And there's a few people here today I know that have spoken before, Mandy on the call as well. Quite a few new faces. So I manage the transport planning team within the council. Within my remit, I've got 3 teams that sit under me. Road safety, pretty much does what it says on the tin. I won't go into too much detail about that thing. I've got a strategy and policy team. So that's led by Owen Clark. They cover the bus service improvement plan and the enhanced partnership, which some of you are probably aware of, going on recently. We'll get involved in the local plans that's been developed elsewhere within the council, but we provide a lot of transport input into that document. The local transport plan, which sets all the transport policy for the council, as far as it relates to the highways, pedestrian cycle infrastructure and road safety. That is just about to go through a refresh that was last written in full in 2011. It's well overdue. A refresh. We're awaiting guidance from government, which is delayed at the moment. And then they do all sorts of other strategic matters, so subnational transport bodies, high level. I then have a delivery team led by Laura Russ. So that's the team that gets involved in prioritising schemes, acting as client for delivery. So we pass things around to our highway improvements team. We do the design, the engineering, the delivery. We manage the budget. We bring money into the council, manage our own money we get from government, try and put bids in to secure other bits of money from other sources. And they also get involved in delivery of larger projects. So more recently, electric vehicle charging project going live across the council. They manage that. Feral Bikes in South East Dorset, that's recently gone live. That's all managed. I want to run through briefly what our priorities are and why. So the policy basis and effect for transport within the county. How do we identify routes and schemes, and then a little bit about the impacts of funding and its sources, and it's sometimes less than ideal where that comes from. I'll run through the policy fairly quickly. So national policy, we have the cycling and walking investment strategy, 2017, with some quite strong aims on walking and cycling. main mechanism there is local authority, so that's pushing it down to us to develop plans for this and to deliver this change. Local cycling walking infrastructure plans, which are mentioned in the other policy, so there was some guidance put out by government on how we go about developing these 10-year strategies. We work with stakeholders, parish councils, interested bodies to develop these schemes, or these plans and the schemes that sit within them. And the idea is that we develop that as a business case for potential funding. So at the moment, when funding comes in, we have to react to it and basically start from one, normally with a very short turnaround time for the department for everything sometime last week. So developing the local cycling walking investment plans is about us getting ahead of ourselves. So we've got the business case there and ready to go. We know what the priority schemes are. And there was funding linked to that and also some guidance design. Year change, bold vision for cycling and walking. Again, it's another government document very recently. Anticipated long-term funding going into walking and cycling changes, but linked to the standards laid out in this document, cycling infrastructure design. Effectively, it raises the bar for the design standards for these routes. And I'll get onto what sort of routes in a minute. And then the Dorset Council local plan. So this is the new plan. Sorry, not the local plan, the Dorset Council plan. And the main aims and objectives within that plan. So protecting the natural environment, climate change, obviously a big issue for everything we do at the moment. Strong communities, sustainable development, and then driving economic prosperity. Then when we're looking at schemes and ideas and prioritising, I'll show you some of the what we do in subsequent slides. Key considerations for us are the change that we're delivering and the cost benefit, so what the impact is. Key to that is data, far more data driven than it's ever been. So if we're putting in bids to the Department of Transport or other companies, we have to back it up with data. So that's survey data, predictions of future use, levels of growth that we could expect. The key to that is increased levels of active travel. We use tools like propensity to cycle tool, or walking audits. We need to shift short car trips off the network. That's linked to congestion reduction, reducing carbon emissions, air quality around schools, all those kind of things. And it's about providing for those trips that people could make, but are choosing by other modes, but are choosing to make by car. But providing access for those who are less mobile, so those using mobility scooters, wheelchairs, adapted cycles, and also to reduce social isolation as a result of that. I mean, I'll get onto some of that when I talk about trailways a bit later on. Reduced accidents. Any scheme we do, the road safety team do cluster sites, so we look at the pattern of accidents across the county on all of our highway network. What type of accident, what type of user was involved, was it equestrian, was it cycle, was it pedestrian, and then look at patterns in that to try and remove some of them. Then improved access to employment. So we know there are areas in the county where we've got very low car ownership. You may not think that, but there are, certainly in our town centres, we've got up to 50% of people don't have access to a car, so they are necessarily using walking. It's something about a hidden issue in Dorset. And we do get that in rural areas as well. It's a surprising number of people in rural areas who don't have access to a car. LSWIPs, which is the acronym there, is Local Cycling and Walking Investment Plans. I mentioned guidance earlier on. That's the documents we have to produce to evidence these needs. Funding sources, that's a consideration for us. But within my team, we get 1.9 million pounds from government every year. That's been the same for the last 4 or 5 years at least. And yet the cost of things has gone up dramatically in that time, and yet we still get the same amount of money. That has to be spent across the whole county. and highway schemes are not the cheapest, so that money doesn't go very far, and we're at the bottom end of counties across the country because of the formula that the government used for that, so we get proportionally less than other authorities do. Certainly our neighbours, BCD, get significantly more than we do, Devon gets significantly. So what we have to do as a team is to make that money go as far as we can, either by using it to lever in other funding, which we tend to be quite successful at doing, and by prioritising the schemes that we have. So we get schemes coming to us from parish councils, from interested our own members, from our own work, and there is far more value in the schemes that we have on the list than our ability to deliver. So we have to prioritise those schemes against all the policies that I've outlined at the start. I'll whiz through these. Most people will know this. There is a huge benefit to physical activity for people. And the idea is you embed that into people's everyday lives. This is the process we have to go through for the cycling and walking plans. It's quite defined. This is set by the Department of Transport. They said that these plans are not compulsory, but in the next sentence said funding is linked to them. And we know that from other work that we've done, we have been asked to see our cycling and walking investment plans. So they're not compulsory, but if you don't have them, you won't get any money. So we're doing it. This gives you an idea of some of the data that goes into those. This is commuting flows from the 2011 census. That's at quite a high level, obviously. That covers the whole of the South East Dorset area. And that's looking at flow. You can see the Ferndown and Athens industrial estate in there highlighted. Black dash line in the middle. Similar one for Dorchester. But this isn't a plan across the whole council. I should say that this is defined areas within the council where we've got the ability to make those changes to short trips. So this is commuting flows of under 8 kilometres into Dorchester. So these are relatively short trips that people are making into Dorchester on a daily basis. Another example, this is within Weymouth. So we've got a tool called the propensity cycle tool, which we have to use. And you can put various bits of data into it and look at different scenarios as to how many people, how many trips you can hope to generate on different corridors if you were to invest a certain amount of money and make certain changes to those. And what we end up with coming out at the end of that is routes, effectively. There's a lot of consultation goes on with that, talking to parish councils, talking to partners, looking at the data, and then it comes to identifying routes. This is just an example of one that happens to be Westmore's Ferndown, the town centre in there, and trying to figure out where those key routes that we need to enhance are. And similarly, we have to do walking audits. So this is the walking audit for Ferndown again. Effectively on this map, green is good, red is bad.
Sorry, the third one.
So this is the walking audit for Ferndown. So we would go through there's set criteria we have to score a street by. So it might be quality of the footways, whether we've got trip hazards in the way or bins and bollards in the way that restrict access. All sorts of things go into that assessment, and then it gives us the ability to map it and look at this and see where we've got those red areas where we've really got poor pedestrian infrastructure. In this case, there's a walking audit. And you can see here Ringwood Road along the bottom. So this point down here, got 2 red junctions there. That's right in the middle of Ferndown Town Centre. We've got 2 reds from a pedestrian perspective in the middle of the town centre. So that's raising alarm bells. Effectively, I know those junctions. We've got very few pedestrian crossings over Ringwood Road, which has got 20,000 vehicles a day going up and down. In a town centre, we've got lots of shops and destinations. So that's not a good situation, something we need to resolve. I'll stay on that slide for a minute. One thing you'll notice with a lot of these slides, they're very urban centric. That is deliberate because the policies that we have and the funding streams that we have are about behaviour change and about value for money and about if we do something, how many people can we get out of their cars or get active or move on to walking. And inevitably that leads us to those areas with the high populations. That's where the numbers go. Where we do have an interest that is not fully urban tends to be on the periphery of this kind of area. So typically my team wouldn't be looking at something right out in the north Dorset countryside. There's just from what our team is here to do, there's not the benefit of investing there. There are benefits of investing there, but it's not our priorities. That would be something that falls within the ROIT and the rights of way team to look at. Where we're interested in is where we can make an investment that will shift large numbers of people to make different decisions and give them a different option to travel. So in Ferndale, for instance, where it's got 50% there, that's the Ferndale and Adams industrial estate. There's upwards of 4,500 people working there. We know from a survey they did a couple of years ago, they've got over 90% of those people are going there in their own car on their own. And even the consultant that did that said that is one of the highest he's seen across the country. And it's because there are very few good alternatives for people to get there from where they're living. That's the kind of thing we are looking at. Within the context of this plan, you can't quite see it up there. It's slightly off the top of that plan. We've got the Castle and Trail. So that is a more multi-use route where we've got a far greater mix of the type of users than we would have within the centre of Ferndale. And that is certainly where we take a slightly different look at how we might deliver improvements. And I've got some examples later on in the.
Can I just interrupt there?
Yeah, sure.
It sounds as though you have got a policy document that you're working through.
We have policy documents. So the ROIT is in place. We have an existing ROIT. It's being refreshed. So there is a local transport plan that is in existence. It's getting quite old. It needs refreshing. So that will come into fruition. So what I was going to say on this slide is those documents are currently going through review. And coming back to the point you were making earlier about multi-user policies and that kind of thing. These are the documents that set the policy within the council. But my suggestion would be if you're looking at a multi-user policy, ROIT would be the logical place for that to sit. That statement will part of that document.
The role. Right. Okay. We'll return to specific policy documents later on, but I'll let you continue.
I just dropped in a couple of case studies of things that have been done recently, just out of interest. And these are not the urban schemes. We're doing an awful lot of work in South East Dorset in the centre of the towns. These are the trailway, bridleway type enhancements where we've been looking at, like I said, the periphery of the towns. So NCN2, National Cycle Network 2, where it runs east-west across the whole of Dorset, including through Dorchester. We had some funding which we could get, and this was funding that was windfall funding, if you like. There was no real forward warning of it. We heard about some funding that was available. It had to be spent quickly. So we looked at that to see what we could do with it. It's a bridleway route, or it still is a bridleway route that links between Martinstown and Dorchester, goes up through somewhere called Clandon Farm. I don't know, some of you may know that route. The existing condition of it before we did this was poor and getting worse. It was surfaced with stone, I think, about 20 years ago, and all of the stone washed out. There was heavy rotting in quite a lot of it. The farm itself, it was changed now at the time was dairy, so there was a lot of slurry effectively across the route through the farm itself. So something that's part of the National Cycle Network and provides a link between a village and one of our main towns, it wasn't offering to people to use. We did do some pre-surveys on that, so we stuck some cameras up on the route just so that we could have a look and see what type of people, what type of users are using that on a day-to-day basis. I've got the results of that in a minute. Skip on to that. There we go. So these are the results of that survey. It was only a 2-day snapshot survey, again, because we didn't have very long to put this bid together and to get access to the money. The blue, all the different types of blue are pedestrians. So the biggest chunk is the likes of us, adults, pedestrians. And then I think the lighter blue is children, the very dark blue is elderly pedestrians. So you can see that the vast majority of the people currently using that route are on foot. The green is cycle users. I haven't got the actual numbers up there, but it's about 27 average a day going through there. The pedestrians were 60, 70 a day. So, and then the brown colour there is equestrian. So over those 2 days, there were 2 equestrians. Now, given it was only 2 days, slight pinch of salt with this, it would fluctuate over time, and ideally we'd have done a slightly longer survey. We went in, we looked at those users. We wanted to provide a much better surface for everybody to try and get from the village into the town. It's a bridleway. Clearly, we're not going to go through and just blacktop straight through. We can't do that. If it was in an urban area, we might look a bit more closely at that, but we need to provide for all of those users. And my team looked at various different surfacing solutions, bringing carbon down as well. So what we ended up doing was using a recycling method where effectively there's a machine that churns over the subsoil once we've checked that it's the right kind of soil, mixes it with kind of a concrete type mixture and solidifies that surface, but it's not as rigid as we get with blacktop. And then it's been topped off with gravel. So I walked up it, take my daughter to a dance class just around the corner, so I walked the dog up it afterwards just to have a look and see how it's bedding in. And it's made a huge change. I did ask my team to see if they could get some pictures of users down there. We got lucky. We found a couple of ladies. This was last week. So that's on part of the bit that's on the Dorchester side of Clandon Farm. On the route, you can see the gravel surface there. That will thin out a bit as the gravel starts to wash off. It's quite thick at the moment. That's really fresh. Kevin, who's the member of my team who went out, spoke to them, and they were pleased with what we've done. Basically asked point blank, what do you think of the surface? And the response was wonderful. And they carried on. So whether it'll be interesting, we will be going down there to do a post-scheme survey. So we'll be doing another survey probably when it warms up a bit. And to get comparable, we try and do the same time of year. And I think our last one was done in August, so we'll try and do it in the summer next year. But my hope is on that one that across all of the user groups, we'll see an uplift. But we were, with the funding stream on that, again, talking about the influence of the funding stream, we were restricted to the type of surface that we could use where that funding came from. So,
sorry, could you just explain?
So that, because that route is part of the NCN, National Cycle Network, it gives us routes into different funding streams. So in that case, it was funding that Sustrans got fairly late in the year. I think the DFT needed to move some money fairly quickly. They gave a chunk of money, several millions, to Sustrans nationally. We've got quite a good working relationship with them. We found out about it. They said, have we got sections of route that would be suitable for this and where we've got issues? We had this route and another one running north out of Dorchester. I can't remember the name of the place it runs through, but similar issues. Major route offers people access locally during the winter months is basically, and we used to get complaints on a fairly regular basis. So we said, well, yeah, we can use that money. It came with conditions. They wanted a sealed surface because they're mainly looking at cycles. We went back saying, well, yes, in an ideal world, but this isn't a cycle track. This is a bridleway. It's a multi-user route. And we worked to come up with a solution that worked as well as we could for everybody, not just for cycles, and again, looking at those knowledge to provide that route through there. So we'll see how that one beds in. It's a type of surface we haven't used before. So yeah.
But they would specify exactly what surface they want. They wouldn't be allowed to say use FlexiPay.
Possibly. I mean, there's all sorts of products out there, but it's looking at our long-term maintenance, carbon emissions, and pretty much every scheme we do now, we're looking at the embodied carbon within that scheme, even the highway scheme. So the type of tarmac that we're using, we're starting to use more cold way asphalt because we don't have to heat it up on the back of a lorry, because heating up is emitting carbon unnecessarily. We're using different material to mix into that. But everything we're doing, we're starting to investigate. So have we got a way of doing that is better?
Okay.
From a carbon perspective, and also providing the surface finish on the surface that is maintainable, isn't going to break up. So we know we've had other right-of-way surfaces where we've used stone, for instance, in the past. If we do that on a slope or with high tree cover, you get the rain on the trees, it feeds up on the leaves, it drops onto the path with much more impact than the rain alone. And basically it pushes out the fines and the path breaks up a lot quicker.
Okay.
So this is looking at the individual circumstance of a specific path and saying, how can we maintain that in the long run?
In the case of green, the company FlexiPave, and I accept there are other crushed rubber crumb deliverers out there in the marketplace, but FlexiPave will say that it is greener than any other surface that is sealed, because they are basically recycling old car tyres. They're guaranteeing it for a period of 20 years, maybe longer. They're looking to increase their guarantee. It's being used on other trails nationally. I'm wondering what research you actually do, and did you contact any riding organisation before you actually did this modification?
So in terms of what research we do, so the highways team do look at alternate materials. I'm not sure whether FlexiPave was looked at on this one or not. There were alternatives investigated. We've certainly used a product on a highway by the side of the highway shared use path on the A37, which sounds, if it wasn't FlexiPave, it's basically the same thing but with a different branding on it. So again, we will trial different surface types. One thing we did raise with that one, I don't think it was FlexiPave, I think it was another one, but it's recycled rather effectively.
I've got to say there is only one FlexiPave, and they say that they're well ahead of any competitor.
Yeah,
for surface and durability.
Yeah, and we will look at them all. Whether that one was one thing we've got to then consider is when that breaks down over time, are we having rubber basically going into the environment? So that there are other considerations with that. Eventually, that will break down. On the A37 route, we've got protected watercourses not very far away from there. What's the long-term impact? That's not to say we wouldn't do it, but there are other considerations with it.
Yes, but that is better addressed with a company putting it down to get that assurance.
It would be. I'm not going to say we'll use one company over another, because we have to go through proper procurement procedures with anything that we.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay.
We buy it. So in terms of contact with user groups, there was. I didn't do this project myself. I know there was some, certainly Tara was. The issue we had with this was the speed at which we had to move, because again, it's going back to that funding issue. In order to get the investment, we had to go very, very quickly, which is sometimes restriction that we have. And what I was going to say on that side of things, what we want to do, I want to talk over what Bridget might talk about later on with the new road coming in. My team is looking at the local plans, looking at where we want our investment to be on the periphery of those urban areas. And there aren't many. There's probably about a dozen routes of across the county where we think actually these are offering real links between villages and little settlements, or there's a real need here where we can move larger numbers of people. We want to identify those through Rowett as far as we can. There'll always be the odd one issue that comes up, but if we can get the majority of those routes identified, we can talk about them through the Rowett. There'll be any. It's there. We'll talk about surfacing. And out of 4,500 kilometres of rights of way across the county, so we'll try and get an idea of the length of routes that we're talking about. It is a very small percentage of the routes across the whole county.
What I would say, I have a declarable interest here that I am the Access Field Officer for the South West of the British Horse Society. But my role on this committee is to represent all riders, regardless of whether they're from the British Horse Society. Here is a bridleway. Fundamentally, the primary use for horse riders. To my knowledge, there were not complaints by equestrians about this route. I don't know if Dave Ackley can locate anything on his reports, on his database.
On NCN2, on the bridleway, as I deal with it, there were no current outstanding complaints.
So there are no complaints.
There have been complaints in the past.
And they were addressed. So there were no outstanding complaints. We've had riders go along it and they have taken copious photographs all the way when it was known that this was coming. I would challenge the issues about slurry across it, but even if there were issues of slurry, that should be addressed with the farm and enforcement. The surface was perfectly adequate, where we got a load of bridleways that could do with surface repairs. And to have this one basically changed to a sealed surface without any consultation with the British Horse Society, taking a very minuscule snapshot. You don't know if those 2 days there were adverse weather conditions, be it too hot, raining, too cold, frozen. I understand that you have to move very quickly, but to identify that particular location when there have been complaints from other users of that bridleway saying this hasn't worked, is one of the people to come back to me. You are selectively looking at the evidence here, and it is essentially a blacktop solution.
The route between Frampton and Maiden Newton on the bridleway there down a road, that's been done, and it's been very well done. All the rutting's gone now, and it looks like as if it's been a macadam surface, but without the tar, and it's a bit gravity on the top, so it settles and get a bit quieter in time. It's a highly improved.
Yeah, I take on board what you're saying. My remit through the LSWIPs, Rowett, and everything else is to look at all those users. And what we've tried to do here is it's bridleway. We don't want to disbenefit the equestrian users on there. The view with the two that we've managed to speak to so far is we haven't, judging by the comment that they gave to my colleague the other day. But what we have done is significantly enhance access on that. Pedestrians, for elderly people walking down there. There's no way you could have negotiated that on a mobility scooter previously. I'll argue that you now can. Certainly the bit running down towards Martin Town from Clandon Farm, the ruts were happy. Last time I went down there on the mountain bike, and it was, you have to go slowly on a mountain bike to get down there. As I understand it, this group is about access for all.
Absolutely.
And that is what we're trying to achieve. On this kind of route, we're not going down there and saying, we just want a racetrack for bikes. because of the type of route it is. We're not putting blacktop. We've done this in a few other places down near Bridport. So we've got paths that go through green areas. We're not blacktopping. We're putting a different surface on them to try and tone down the paths. It's not the same as this surface, but it's trying to consider the type of environment we are in, what those user groups are, and coming up with a solution that is as near as we can get it good for everybody. Because if we were doing this for just cycles, let's say, that would be a smooth blacktop surface. We can't do that, and we wouldn't want to do that. If we're looking at something going down Ringwood Road in Ferndown, yes, we'd be looking at a blacktop smooth surface.
Okay, I take that point. You've just put a press release out about a new section of the cycling corridor behind the college area, where you've taken the bride away. The press release says you've surface improved it. And blacktop.
So, first of all, I can't speak for my colleagues in Bournemouth because I have no involvement with what they're doing on their schemes. Yeah, that's for them. I think Philip's on the call. He may have some points on that. But we did sit down with yourself, looking at the schemes within Dorset, so north of the Stour, effectively.
We looked at all the 6 cycle corridors, and I've asked for the Witchar assessments continually from you. I get no response to my emails over many months. I put in a freedom of information request to get a copy of that Witchar assessment. It should have arrived by the date of this meeting, and it has not arrived.
We have responded to that FOI. Now I say we, as in my team, have put together a response to that FOI, which has gone to the FOI team. Whether they have sent it out, I don't know. They should have done, because that was some time ago that we put that together.
So I will be receiving a copy of that Witchar assessment.
We won't be getting a Witchar assessment because, as we said at the meeting when we met about this, we didn't do formal Witchar surveys over those corridors, nor are we required to do so. What we did do is sit down with you at some length and go through every single corridor in Dorset and discuss the specific requirements of horse riders, equestrians within that area. And through that, identify 2 or 3 routes where there were specific concerns, which we will take on board in delivering those routes.
There were many concerns, but you say you're working to LTN 120. I'll quote you page 37 of LTN 120. It says walking, cycling and horse riding assessment and review. Title. Item 4.5.10. DMRB also contains guidance on undertaking a walking, cycling and horse riding assessment and review, which are, although this is applicable on trunk roads, it provides a good basis for assessing the needs of all users along cross into urban roads. And then it goes on to the equality and access statements. Sustrans are making it a red line now for acquiring funding that equestrian inclusion is there. And you also have the active travel policy, and you are talking about transforming travel. And on item 6, it says active travel covers any journey that is made by physically active means and covers such diverse activities as horse riding, skateboarding, roller skating, and riding a scooter. However, walking and cycling are by far the most common forms of active travel, and therefore on these modes that this report focuses. And the Transport Minister, Jessie Norman, said, we should be clear that the cycling and walking strategy may have that name, but it is absolutely targeted at vulnerable road users, including horse riders, and that's dated the 5th of November 2018. So very clearly, equestrians are on the map and they should be on the route. And we are stakeholders, the BHS. But from that meeting onwards, there's been no comment, even though I've been sending copious emails, but no response from your team. How would you account for that?
I think there's various things in there. Firstly, happy to have discussions about our schemes. The reason I would suggest that we haven't been in detailed discussion is those schemes where you identified specific concerns on behalf of the DHS are ones that we have not progressed yet. So there is a programme, for those of you who don't know, Transforming Cities Fund within Dorset is about 14.5 million pounds of investment in a whole series of public transport and active travel improvements along pretty much the major roads through that area. So not the trunk road itself, but the major A roads. There are around a dozen separate schemes within the Dorset area. Can't deliver it all in one go, so we had to break it up into sections to deliver. There were 2 or 3 specific areas where we picked up quite a few issues in that discussion. They've been recorded.
They're more than just a couple of issues. We went through all the routes. We said below the main A road into the centre of the town that you would be less likely to have equestrian use. But certainly on the peripheral roads surrounding Burndown, you could anticipate equestrian use because there are centres of equestrian population there, riding schools, and access to the green space. And you need to link the green spaces together.
Philip, I think that it's very, very specific. There's other people waiting to come in.
Sorry, I didn't see the hand up.
So should we take those as well? But what you're talking about is so specific, needs a separate meeting. I would
Look,
some of that detail.
This needs to go to the. I'm talking about policy here, general policy.
Yes, yeah.
And I would say that the LAF should be able to make their comments as a statutory organisation. And surely my role as chair is to make sure that we can have this discussion and it is not closed down.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it's closed down, but some of the specific things that you're talking about probably need to be in a separate meeting. That's all.
Okay, I'm talking about LTN 120. I'm talking about active travel. I'm talking about ministerial statements by Richard Benyon, where he said that all user groups should be on the same surface, the same route. So here we have policy specifics. I've asked for the multi-use policy. Dorset regrettably appears not to have one, which is a major, as I see it, omission. The LAC may have their own comments on this. But yeah, there are some fundamental issues here that need to be drilled down. And here's the appropriate meeting to make it, I would maintain.
Yeah, but we have said through the ROIC, we will have some, I don't know if it's an actual policy, but our statement of how we're going to address the multi that is in there.
Well, then I would challenge it. Why has not the ROIC been effective in producing multi-use for the routes that have been rolled out historically? You know, we've got one less than half a mile down the road going into Charminster where we have horse warning signs on the side of the road and a segregated path for walkers and cyclists. And the horse warning signs say they've got the horse on it, the red triangle. So clearly you have equestrian use down there, but the horses are put on the road and not on the safety of the segregated route, which to me seems indefensible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm talking about the new road, not what was from the road, because I wasn't the expert then, and I was not here to speak on that, but David is, of course.
Right. But, you know, we will drill down to that, and that's a fundamental policy issue here that the LAC may have a view on.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is people.
Well, yeah, I see a hand up.
You've got Mandy.
Mandy, please. Come in.
Hi everyone. Hope you can hear me all right. Hi Wayne, long time no see. Yeah, I'm just going back. I wanted to come in when Wayne was actually talking about surfaces there and identifying routes that can be improve surfaces. And it's really an observation, and Wayne, you may already have looked at this, is the North Dorset Trailway, which I've tried to cycle a couple of times, and I really can't do it. My arms want to drop off by the time I get to the end, because you've got those big rocks, because they've used that, it looks like railway surf, like they use either side of the railway tracks, which, whether that's because it's North Dorset train and the old train track and someone thought that was a good idea, but and I've spoken to a lot of people along there when we actually taken to walking it now, because I can't cycle it, and people tend to comment as well about the big rocks, and it's really hard to use on a bike. So it's an observation, but maybe one that you've looked at or considered.
So that particular path, and again, I didn't have involvement in the delivery of that one, but there are areas where we've got blacktop with a strip of that kind of gravelly stone finish down the side. Now, the intention was that provided a separate, slightly more grippy surface for the equestrian users, so that we provided for both sets of users down there. And there are some bits where I think you have to ride on the. Actually, no, it's further north, isn't it? There are sections where it is quite lumpy.
It's mainly towards Stir, yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't even see how a horse rider could use that.
And it's back to that issue of trying to provide for all users. So what we can't do on some of those trailways is provide a surface that's absolutely perfect for all users, because every single group of users has got a slightly different preference, if you like. So what we did on the Gossamer Trailway recently, so that's not a sealed surface, but we've reprofiled it, tried to improve the drainage, make a bit more space, so that we know we've got, again, horse riders are on there, there's cyclists, there's an industrial estate where people work on there. What we effectively had was a metre strip with a bit of a grass bund. The metre strip was a pond, for want of a better word, going each way. Users couldn't get past each other within what was available, so we've cleared back to the full width of what was there previously, given us a 4.5, 5 metre wide surface. All the users have got much more space, and the surface is better for everybody, pretty much. I would argue no worse for horse riders, and certainly better for pedestrians and big bikes and mobility scooters, which we're starting to see down there now. But again, if we were looking at exactly one cyclist trying to get to Walsbridge Industrial Estate wanted, for instance, that surface, when it gets wet, if you ride on it, it is going to flick mud all up your back. It's not ideal, but it's a balance of need across all of those users, that on most days it's dry. You decide whether you want to cycle it on a day when it's wet and you're going to get a bit muddier. But it's about providing that balance of user needs across that surface. And we've enhanced access on that. We've taken away A-frames, which restricted equestrian mobility scooters, all sorts of access onto that trailway. So again, it's looking at trying to provide something that is as good as we can get it for everybody that's using it. And inevitably, that's not perfect for any one group.
Yeah, I understand that. My observation is just that trailway, for the most part, isn't suitable for any user, really. If you walk, you risk twisting your ankle on the big rocks. I can't imagine a horse using it. And on a bike, it's pretty treacherous, unless you've got a supersized mountain bike with supersized tyres. But it's just an observation. So,
thanks.
Just wondered, obviously, this discussion is happening on every route everywhere in England. Is there not a national get-together of the Sustrans and the cyclists that sort of tries to bottom this out, and so that you can all have a much quicker discussion locally?
Yeah. And we tend to go back to partners, spoke to yourself, Sustrans, they're looking at multi-user routes across this country, Northern Ireland. And we asked the question, what other products are around? What other discussions?
You shouldn't really have to do that. If it was done at a national level, it would be a lot quicker. There would be some local variation. I appreciate that.
The policy is multi-use.
No, that's the question. Though is clearly surface for multiple. there is a multi-use question, but we could get away from all this debate
Right,
about surface if there was a national debate. And I wondered if BHS and the Ramblers were having that.
The BHS like to have a policy document. We like to be consulted on a case-by-case basis, because you are not going to get one size fits all. You can't say, right, what is appropriate in one location will be appropriate in another. You can make generalisations, and they are in the policy document.
Okay, that was just a question.
Nicola's also got that hand up.
So, Nicola, yes, please come in.
You're on mute, Nicola. Speaking.
Right. Sorry. Hello, Wayne.
Hiya.
I don't suppose you remember me. It was a very long time ago. But anyway, so what I wanted to ask you was something slightly different. Obviously, active travel, green travel isn't just about climate change mitigation or just about exercise. It's also about well-being and the quality of people's experience. And this, obviously, I don't know every green travel route in Dorset. I live in Wimborne, so I'm familiar with Lye Road and then the cycle route that goes further on across the Lye Road down the B something towards Haskins. And certainly there was a consultation document in which biodiversity improvements were promised. And indeed, if one goes onto the little videos and things of the consultation documents, there is lovely pictures of biodiversity improvements, which would make people's quality of experience when using those routes improved. But what we seem to have is a rather grey motorway and no biodiversity improvements, even though it does say on a website that there has been biodiversity improvements. But I would be really pushed. I have not seen them. I am totally and utterly underwhelmed. So what we've got, and we'll go back, so we've lost lovely verges, we've got pieces of tarmac instead, and we have got no mitigation, no net gain, which is going to improve people's quality of experience, even though it was promised by 2022. Can you comment, please?
I can comment. It's certainly something probably worth discussing outside of this in a bit more detail. Certainly, there have been areas of enhancement down there. It would be good to walk through it with you, possibly out there. I know it was sown. It's certainly all the bits that we've added in. There was quite a lot of discussion around the specific mix of the wildflower seeds going in, where they're going, what was in that mix.
So has there been any tree planting at all?
There has.
Between Wimborne and Haskins, say?
There has, definitely. But it's quite... I'd need to pull up the plans to remind myself exactly where we did what.
Yes, so there's been an enormous loss. There's been enormous loss of verge with just about nothing that I can see. So I'd love to walk it with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've got your contact details through there. So if I make contact with you, because I need to go out there anyway and have another look.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The people with their hands up, remove their hands so we can just keep track.
Thank you. Simon Christopher, Dorset Councillor. I'm going to take you really on quite a tour of Dorset. I think we have mentioned just now of the area between Maiden Newton and Frampton. And in relation to the area around Notton and Notton Dairy Farm, etc., I know somebody has quite a lot of horses in and around Notton, and I don't get any complaints about matters in relation to Notton, which is particularly interesting. With relation to the North Dorset Trailway, I cycle the trailway at least twice a week, probably more in the summer. I must confess that the surface is somewhat variable. And I would say to Mr. Sayers that interesting question is perhaps the surface between the bridge over the Stour and the Halloon Lane, close to where the railway bridge was taken away. The surface between Stourhurst and Newton and the Stour Bridge, I find, is absolutely fine. The surface through what I'm going to call Beer Marsh Farm is absolutely brilliant, and on down through to Shillingston. And I must admit that when I cycle that, I find all kinds of different people using it. Cyclists, people in buggies, some equestrian use as well. And I don't pick up any particular problems. I do find that area between the bridge and the entrance to Beer Marsh Farm and the lane there perhaps slightly more challenging. I have picked up on your comment about perhaps urban priorities, but as a school governor and as a Dorset council, I can think of one particular village that would really benefit from safe access on 50 metres, which would really allow children better access and safe access to a recreation ground, which is currently denied because there isn't safe access. Parish council is relevant to that, is working on that, and I look forward to engaging with you on that particular area. And I'll just finish by making comment on the fact we haven't heard much about Bridport and Chiddock. In fact, I will have one more point about Chelmsford. Bridport and Chiddock, and of course Chiddock is most polluted place in the country and does need a equivalent to a trailway between Chiddock and Bridport. So I've mentioned that point. With respect to, somebody mentioned Charminster. Chet mentioned Charminster. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but of course, there is discussion about north of Dorchester and whether that will go in the local plan. And of course, in October 2015, with the finalised West Dorset local plan, clearly the inspector did say that the old West Dorset District Council should look favourably on sites north of Dorchester. And I don't know whether it's etiquette or not for you to make any comment about possible better pedestrian access through the water meadows, or indeed improvements for equestrian users that hypothetically might be forthcoming, or is that an area into which you would not want?
I suppose there's a few points there. Looking at Charminster first and going north, you've got Charlton Down, and then a bit further north. There's a route there that it's outside of an urban area. It's something we've been trying to deliver through private land for 10 years or more, probably more like 15 years. And it's a really difficult one to do. I'm not going to come back to yourself. There's a public footpath there at the moment through a field with livestock in it. Yeah, we're talking about linking Charlton Down, which has got Benham houses in it, to the school down in Charminster. Where at the moment there's a deed-restricted rural lane that people have got to try and negotiate. They don't because it's too dangerous. There's a stable next to that public footpath. Ideally, we want to change that to a right-of-way route because it provides access to the stables and it provides the link between Charlton Down. But they are not easy schemes to get delivered. So there are schemes like that, and I suppose coming back to the point, we don't exclusively do things in areas. Because we've got our own 1.9 million that I mentioned, that is spread across the county. We do prioritise routes. You mentioned parish councils with desire to link up with playing fields, schools, whatever. That all comes into my team. So we've got a long list of desires, if you like, around the county. We will look at that. We'll look at the accident record. We'll look at the need, how it matches the policy. Is it safe route to school? Is it, all these things go into that prioritisation process to come out. And the top ones get to do it. We're going for, if we've got something that needs external funding, we have to apply different prioritisation to it, because it might be that the thing that's top of our own list to deliver doesn't hit the requirements or tick the boxes for the funding stream. So then we start going down through our listing, and well, that one doesn't fit, that one doesn't fit, this one, that works. That's what we go into the funding for. Because if we were to put let's say a small rural scheme in through a national funding pot, we just can't build a business case for that. We won't get the money. So we have to use our own money, our local money, to do those schemes. Or windfall pots, so the work that was done for the Cotswold Trailway, that money came out of, it was a week, this pot of money that's available, it needs to be spent this year, and it went out to the whole council, fit into this, to what you want. And we secured a large chunk of money and made some significant improvements to the trailway. But it's being in a position to know what your priorities are, so that when the opportunities come up, you know which are the top ones to go for. In terms of North Dorchester, as that comes forward, it's got funding, Garden City funding, there's consulting. We will engage with that, whether or not it ever becomes a part of the local plan or not. But if it does, we need to have spoken to them, because if we do build a large number of houses there, we necessarily need to enhance the link between those houses and Dorchester, where all the employment, the services and the hospital and everything else. Yeah, absolutely, we'd be engaged with that.
Janet, then I'll take you forward.
In actual fact, you've answered most of my what I was going to ask you. And I should declare an interest, because I'm the clerk of the parish council, desperate for a shared use route linking us to Dorchester. You used the word early on in the presentation, which I found really, really useful in that context. You used the phrase short trip. What do you define short trip as?
It's not set in stone. I think with the local cycling and walking investment plan, 8 kilometres is around that. So it's beyond, if we were looking at walking, that's probably beyond most what most people do on a daily basis, but it's certainly what you could accomplish on a bike on a daily basis. In certain areas, we've just got very, very high levels of car use.
Yes.
Disproportionately silly high levels. And I've stood by one of the schools in Ferndown discussing school parking with a landowner there and access and this kind of thing. And we watched somebody about 100 yards away down the side road, and we saw them pull off their drive up and park by the school to drop their child. And he told me it was going to happen. He said, "Look, watch this person. That's what we're going to do." That's an extreme example. But again, Ferndown, you've got the Trickett's Cross estate area towards the north, by the A31. Area of deprivation, there must be lower car ownership within there. You've probably got about a third of people there without access to a car. There's no safe and attractive route from that estate down to 3 schools in the centre of Birmingham. And the whole, lots of car trips and lots of people who have just benefited because they have to try and use a route that's not really good.
But I found the whole presentation helpful in setting out your way it works, really. So thank you.
On the North Dorchester front, I need to dig into my files to be 100% sure. But I'm pretty sure that 3 or 4 years ago, we did make this point about linking it into the existing rights of way network, which in any case, that is set out quite clearly in the National Planning Policy Framework document, which the council will be required by law to follow when they get a planning application to look at. As far as the North Dorset Trailway is concerned, I'm interested in what Mandy was saying, because historically the LAP was always looked upon the North Dorset Trailway has been a bit of a success story for Dorset and something we should be seeking to emulate and extend and so on. And I suspect part of the problem is the development was very much driven by the North Dorset Trailways Trust rather than by the council. And as a result, I believe substantial stretches of the North Dorset Trailway have never been designated as a highway of any form. And so I think there's a real grey area as to what the maintenance responsibilities are. So certainly very little of it has been designated as a bridleway, which will pick up, Wales concept. So to what extent you regard yourself as being responsible for maintaining the North Dorset Trailway is it the question I would love to hear from you on.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Maintenance is an issue nationally. Certainly from going back to the more work we do on the urban stuff now from a pedestrian and cycle perspective, there is no ring fence maintenance budget for cycleways, footways. It is being left down to local authorities when they get their maintenance budget from the Department of Transport each year to decide themselves whether they use that money for filling potholes or for cycleways or for what they do with it.
Under the Highways Act, you have a duty to maintain footpaths and bridleways. How far that responsibility goes is very much how long it's a piece of string. But to say, in the case of the North Dorset Trailway, I don't think it has a legal status in terms of the Highways Act.
It's his area, really.
It's been sometimes as I've worked at Sturms and Newton, it's not been my a number of years, but certainly some of the problems are generic across the routes in the whole county. Obviously we have the Highway Authority has an obligation to keep the surface to i.e. footpath for pedestrian users, so on and so on and so on. Any routes which carry, for example, the North Dorset Trailway may be footpath in some areas, bridleway in others and not in others, but there will be agreements in place for the surface to be maintained along its whole width to each user. The problem sometimes lie if we get users falling outside the bracket of who's supposed to use it, which is sometimes always a problem. And as far as the surface is concerned, it's been a problem for as long as I've been working in the industry to find out a surface that's suitable for every classification of user. It really has. It's been, and in meetings with my colleagues in other areas of the country, the group meetings we have, it's a problem they have. And I think we're tackling it in Dorset really the best way we can by playing the North Dorset Trailway, the Castleman Trailway, increasing money, increasing funding, making the routes open for everybody to use. And some of the routes we do or we try are, for want of a better phrase, experimental. Somebody's got to try some of this stuff first to see whether is it actually suitable or not. And I'll back up what Wayne says about between Charlton Down and Charminster. I've been trying that for, I had it was that long ago. Unfortunately, some of this stuff, again, with some areas of the trailway, even though it's railway line, years ago, it was sold out to private individuals. So then we're incumbent on them, on their permissions to even work on them. The Highway Authority is responsible for the service of the right of way. We don't necessarily own it. So we do in some cases, not in others. Offer some schemes that Wayne does, and I'm currently involved with. So we've also got it. And the same in your situation with the trailway part. Some of the bits of that we own, some of it we don't. So we can't just, want a better phrase, dedicate right-of-ways or whatever we need anywhere. Sometimes
I don't think it's a question of land ownership in this particular case. It's a question of, has it been designated as some form of highway? And therefore, do you have a responsibility to maintain or arrange to have it maintained?
Yeah, I can obviously bring this up with Graham because Graham now covers the area, but certainly we can't make anything into a right of way unless it's either claimed by the public or the landowner dedicates it. The two ways. Obviously, we have compulsory purchase, obviously, which is not in these days of it's not a big thing, but certainly somebody mentioned the rough area of the trailway. I'll certainly see my colleague Graham when I get the opportunity to mention that to him, see whether he's actually aware of it.
And obviously, we can't, it'd be wonderful from a pedestrian point of view if we could join the dots where we've got bridleway, footpath, bridleway. We can't do it because of desirability or need. And Vanessa's got a whole stack of DMMO applications where we're seeking upgrading on historic evidence.
Again, that's something that will improve as the road comes online, where we get highway severances. We all know places in the county working on one at the moment where we got footpath, then we've got bridleway in the Middle Valley, and then a kilometre and a half of footpath, and then it goes back into bridleway again. And to walk it, it's all the same route. It was just the way it was claimed. And again, that's unfortunately that's the way it is until we can negotiate and sort some of these things out. All they're claimed as high rights.
Yeah. Just going down some of the lists, some of the specifics. I've been trying to find out what user groups can use which part. Now you're saying the Castlemaine Trail. You're speaking of it as being totally multi-use now. Is that the case?
No, it's not. But again, my team doesn't have control over that. It's back to the private landowners. So the bits that we got some money last year, we identified that as being an important route. It serves a lot of employment areas. It links together settlements. It goes up to North Valley Country Park, and we can improve that section. What we didn't do was have either the remit or the money to look at the entire Castle Trailway and identify those bits where perhaps horses don't have access. There are other bits we're looking at because there are other problems with it. But my remit is not to open up new access for equestrian users. Let's say where it's right away. That falls with Ranger Service. And we will certainly link up with them. And with one of the routes we discussed on Transforming Cities, one of the options open to us is a public footpath, which goes along exactly the alignment that we expect the equestrians to use, which would completely bypass the 60-mile-an-hour bit of highway and would solve the problem. But that's about then having a discussion with Green Spaces team, say, is that feasible? We don't know the landowner. We have no idea whether that's achievable or not.
Okay. The Maiden Newton ramp is something I've been emailing about, and I don't get an affirmative reply. That was designed for equestrian use. Yep. Is it equestrian use?
It was designed by us as equestrian use. It was intended by us to be for equestrian use. My colleague is still pushing Network Rail to make that happen.
Right.
And it's third-party ownership again. So we can only do so much. But we are, that was always intended to provide a link onto that railway for equestrian, and that's the position.
Still intention.
Yeah, that's absolutely still our intention. It's just Network Rail are not an easy organisation to work with.
We're happy to lobby. Queen Anne Drive Merley, that was opened up. Questions have asked, can they use it? The road's too busy. The reply I had back from the department was non-specific. So I think individual users, as with all the cycle corridors, have got to make a decision whether or not they put their horses on the road or on the newly constructed routes, which would be in line with active travel policy, with all the ministerial statements and policies of non-motorised users coming out of Whitehall. So would you be in agreement with that?
That particular one is in BCP, so outside of my remit.
Okay, the ones within your remit, would you subscribe to that policy? You take the safest possible option, because in one instance we've got a segregated route where the road's been narrowed, raised curb, and it would appear that it's been signed for walking and cycling where the verge has been narrowed, which was formerly used by horse riders, so they would go on the segregated route. You surely wouldn't want to go on the narrowed highway and have to face commuters and HGV traffic. That would be common sense.
That is a big discussion about what's legal, what's not, what we can sign, what we can't sign. and some of which we discussed when we sat down and went through the Dorset sections.
Bottom line is we don't want an inquest or we don't want a fatality. And when you look at it from 2010 onwards, we've had 8,500, this is nationally, road incidents involving horses. A year ago, 44 people have lost their lives, 1,453 injured, 502 horses have been killed, and 1,311 horses injured. So those are figures from November 2010 to this time a year ago. So we want people to be safe.
And as I said, starting at the accidents, while I take on board we shouldn't be reacting to accidents because they happen, we do try and get ahead of things. But we do look at the accident stats pretty much matter of course at all highway schemes. And I know the one where particularly we did discuss horse access and equestrian access. I had a quick look yesterday at the accident records for that over the last 5-year period, which tends to be our standard period of time for looking at these things. There were about 6 motorcycle related accidents, which is about half of course LT wheelers, highest risk group we've got on the roads. There was about 6 cycle related incidents. There were 1 or 2 pedestrian, a handful of car versus car, no question. But
you either could say you've been lucky or that
yeah.
the riders do not feel that it is safe for them to go there. And if you put a safe route in, they will use it. Yeah, so multi-use has got to be the default option. I would maintain, but yeah.
I share Chair's concern about Maiden Newton. I was actually chair of the planning committee for South and West when the application went through. Strictly, it's into the bay of the old Maiden Newton to Bridport railway line that closed in May 1975. It's quite amazing that we're 47.5 years on. Given the railway background of the Member of Parliament for Dorset West, perhaps encourage the Chair to voice his concern to the Member for Dorset West, Mr. Loader, about any delays. I did talk about the North Dorset Trailway. I want to say how wonderful it was, but I do question for equestrian users the difficulties they may face. I would say is a mile or so to the southwest of Stourpay due to the gradients trailway, which really are quite steep, even for keen cyclists and certainly for equestrian users.
There was one other issue that I'd raised. There's a railway bridge that I can't get into because we haven't got internet access down here. It's gone to planning where you've got a segregated route for cyclists in this planning proposal for the new bridge. I put in a representation asking for it to be including equestrian use. I have nothing back, but surely you're not going to ask equestrians to use the main highway when next to it you have a segregated safe way that equestrians.
I don't know the details of that. That's the, I can't remember the name of the road, DCP one, isn't it? Was that where they had a bridge on both sides? We certainly haven't put in any planning up.
What I'm hearing is you yourself are saying the common sense solution must fail if equestrians feel that they should go on the segregated route that may or may not have been decided and designed for cyclists only, then that's a decision they must take. But it'd be rather nice if it was made policy that multi-use was the default option.
I think as far as policy goes, point back to again the road. I know people are talking about the road later. My team are certainly
And you would support that in your submission?
Having a policy on multi-use, yeah, I think it makes sense. So
That's brilliant. We can agree on that. How would the forum like to sum this up? What recommendation would we want?
We want to see something really positive and heroic.
Support our view that it would be useful to have a policy in there. Obviously, rather like that we could give that, and really that would be interested in perhaps some offline tackling of services that would help make the process much quicker for competition and new opportunities as well.
Yeah. So the forum would support a policy of multi-use as the default policy, and would look for retrospective inclusion of equestrians on routes and all routes going forward. I see your hand up, Nikki. I'll just take Nikki and then I'll come to you, Paul.
Hello. I just thought I would add that there's many instances where, sorry about the way I look, by the way. Many apologise for looking like, what's it, John Silver. But anyway, what it should also, where appropriate, we should try and, where we can, also insert into local plans and neighbourhood plans, as well as the ROIP. Because often these things are a planning issue. So
if I just take that to the vote then, that including that there. Paul, you wanted to come in first?
I think the problem is you are saying that to count as a multi-user route, it must be surfaced in a way to suit with your question. And i.e. it can't be blacktop.
Well, we're happy to use blacktop.
In the rural environment, that's fine. In the urban environment, I'm not sure it's practical. And a lot of these cycle tracks are developed as part of new roadway schemes. To have them soft surfaced, I'm not sure it's practical.
No, you're misunderstanding me. In an urban environment, you would expect to go with the primary user, so you would expect to find a blacktop surface. Where you're going into a more rural environment, and I'm supported with Cycling UK with their off-road strategic advisor, that you would expect that to reflect the primary user, which would be equestrians. So it's basically
I'm not sure that works. I mean, they are an important user group. To say they are the primary user group is pushing it far too hard. I mean,
could we just ensure we don't try and specify surface in this?
We're not specifying surface in this.
And that will avoid any misunderstanding in the future.
Surface is a case-by-case basis. Yeah.
You have to be careful, don't you, because saying primary user and things that people survey and actually walk with it. So you know. But
they're designated for a primary user group. But we accept that since 1968 you have cyclists on it and also walkers are on it as well. It's got to be fit for purpose for all user groups.
Absolutely.
But you are reflecting the primary user historically on that designation. Well, okay.
I'm sorry, but I just do not buy that.
Mm.
You know, in case of a right of way, in law, cyclists have an equal entitlement.
Yes, they do.
To equation. And the physical reality of it is the vast majority of the right of ways in the county don't see a foot, a hoof print from year to year. And so to say they are primary user, it is just not right.
But in law, they are seen as being, it's got to be fit for all, and it's got to be made sure that it is fit for horses to go along, even though you have limited use of the question.
Fit for the ordinary traffic of the district is the phrase in the test case. And yes, clearly in the rural environment, that would mean the question is. But in the urban environment, and the majority of the cases you've been pushing to us today are in the urban environment, I don't think you can say they are the primary.
See how we can get consensus if we specify.
That's why we believe that.
Respect to the North Dorset Trailway, I'm hearing about my experiences, but I'm sure none of us would want to take away its rural quality and charm. And it is delightful seeing horses on the trailway, though I must confess that I come across more cyclists than I do horses. And this question about the surface, even more. I ended up discussing this with a cycle shop owner or a bicycle, and I had to revert to German tyres. I kept on getting punctures. My German tyre seems to cure everything on a surface that is presumably amenable to equestrian users as well. So there are ways around it.
It's an interesting observation on North Dorset Railway, and I haven't been up there for some time. Really, I used to take my kids up bikes out. Where we've got split surface, quite often there's sections where you've got blacktop surface and then there's crushed stone surface next to it. Quite often where you see the leftovers from the horses, shall we say, is on the blacktop. Just for observation.
I would finalise by saying that as a Dorset councillor, where we spend perhaps £225 million on adult and child care, etc., and not quite so much on highways, and it's clearly important that we do have good, safe trailways, etc., so that people can run and cycle, because your typical doctor will turn around and say, with rising levels of type 2 diabetes, not so much that people should walk, they should either run or cycle.
And the best surface for running is non-concussive one, where you've got the benefits of crushed rubber front. And if you have somebody elderly falling, you minimise possibilities of, say, hip fractures. And with a rubberised surface, cycling, you're far less likely to slip. And then you've got the benefits for equestrians as well. That's non-slip, non-concussive. So that is certainly something that, even with the benefits of the green agenda, they're massive payoffs there for every user group. Yeah. Okay, so we're happy to sort of make that recommendation going forward.
Sorry, can I say something? I mean, I'm not an expert on rights of way, as everybody will know, but I think that the point that Paul made was important because, and I think Janet might have sort of said something slightly, but it's my understanding that a bridle way is the users is the status of a bridle way is equal between people on foot and that which includes obviously disabled people and people on horseback. And then the 67 Act basically says that cyclists can use it with both of those user groups as long as they give way to both of those user groups. And I thought that was the law, not that there was a primary user, but there was two equal users and then one that could use it as well, but giving way to the two others. And isn't that the law? I think it's important to get that understood, I think.
But you've got to make sure that you have the widths and the height.
Oh, of course, but for both users.
And you wouldn't expect these stars, for example.
No, and you certainly wouldn't have stars. Well, you shouldn't have stars anyway, actually. Under the British Standard 5709, styles should be being got rid of as fast as we can get rid of them. But it is, bridleways are for both users, obviously with the need for creating the space and the possibility for safe and easy use for horse riders and for people on trampers or other mobility vehicles. I mean, I think it's really important to have that understanding. Otherwise, we're talking in several different places here.
Yeah.
Okay, I've said it.
Right. Okay, that's brought to the end item 4. It might be convenient to have a break before we go on to the next item. Are we happy to take a quick 5-minute comfort break?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
No, did you know?
Oh, I have got it.
Just that one slide.
hand over to Dave Ackley, Senior Ranger, Central Region.
Morning, Justice. Obviously, brief introduction. I'm Dave Ackley, Senior Ranger for Council. I started off, God knows how long ago, when Chris was in charge. I've worked for the authority since 2001. Obviously, my role has changed over the years, but it's basically been involved in right away. I've been asked to give a brief discussion on the statutes screen in front of you at the moment. First of all, I forgot the very first thing I wrote down and didn't read it properly. Apologies from Giles Nicholson, my service manager, who's in London at the moment doing working, and our interim head of service, Greg Stanley, who's also, I'm afraid, away working. So you got third place, as in me. Basically, the stats in the screen in front of you, the red line represents the jobs coming into us, and the green line represents what we've been doing. The first date, in case you can't see it, is 2013 on the bottom, and the last date is 2022. Just a few points to make on that, and then obviously I'll take any questions I can take. Obviously, this is put together through the public input through what we call Seaside, which is our system used for controlling and managing the right-of-way network. So, as a member of the public puts a complaint on the system, online, it appears in a senior ranger's inbox. We then deal with it appropriately, depending on what that is. And obviously then that generates a Seaside report, which generates the red line up there. When a job is done, the guys go out and do the work, or I go out and do the work. It's then marked as complete on the system, which obviously generates the green line. So it's really, really simple. So obviously there are many factors with this, as you can see. At the moment we're just dipping down again, and we're running around. I think it's around 3,000 jobs at the moment for the whole service. So obviously many factors to this. The reasons why, yes, you see the 2013 there, really, it's just about 1,100 jobs there we're doing, and then it climbs up. The reason for that is effectively we make it easier for the public to report by even changing the waymark discs. So as you can see, that waymark disc has got the website on the bottom, which instantly makes it a lot easier for people to report. Also, smartphones had an input into that. Everybody now these days carries one of these. If a member public carries one of these, they can report a job on our system. One of the few dead spots I know about is Cern Abbas. Apart from that, the whole county's reasonably good internet. So, which is a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is obviously we're getting a better snapshot, as you see by the red line. The complaints are going up of what the public are finding out there and the jobs they're reporting. We're no longer relying, as in the bad old days, Chris, when we used to go out there with yellow forms and fill them out. Remember? We're now all online, so they can report things easy to us by a smartphone and everything like that. Advantages are, with the smartphone, easy to report. They can take photographs, which saves us oodles of time. If I can send the guys out, that bridge is busted. With the modern systems, before the guys go there, I can see what the bridge is like, how wide it is, how many decking planks are on it. And also the public can then photograph it, and I can see, oh yeah, there's one decking plank broken. As a routine, we will check every single one on the bridge anyway, just in case, and upgrade if necessary. That's advantages. Disadvantages, obviously we get a lot more complaints, which is, in a way, you can see that as an advantage, because then we're getting hopefully the network will be getting better. The ways we can work better, obviously, since 2013, looking forwards from that day, we're working better because we all carry these things around now. And the advantage of that is, in our world, is every job that the public have ever put on the system is available for me to look at on here, to the better powers of the internet. Years ago, I used to go out with a map and a compass, a job full of papers that thick, and have to physically write everything out. Now, as the jobs come in, I can go out, look at them, photograph them, write on here what I've done about it, send that, so that then gets, providing the customer puts an email on here, it then sends them an email of what I've said, I can go and see Mr. Bloggs, who's the farmer who's blocked the path, with my map on here, and say, the path's blocked there, did you know? I've got a map here I can show him. I can then get aerial photographs up. So that's all smarter way of working, which is made, surprisingly, the green line go up as well as the red. We're making better use of more staff, slightly more staff these days, and volunteers. We have, obviously, each parish, as you're aware, has a liaison officer, and some of those are really, really good and help out a lot in keeping the backlog down. As you can see the dates on there, around 2019, just I physically won't point it, you don't mind. Those in the room can see, sorry. Around 2019 here, to the end of 2021, we had an incident called COVID. And as you can see, there's a massive spike in the jobs coming in there. That was simply people bored, wanting to walk. There's no explanation, but I'm glad they did, because by doing that, they're increasing their health. And I've got to be perfectly honest with everybody present. I've no idea how the green line went up as well at that time, because I felt more busy then than ever before. Because from the manager's point of view, at that time, I had guys working in mortuaries. I was directing traffic. We had other people who were pulled away from their jobs rightly for the emergency we had. You know, I'm not criticising that, but somehow we managed to maintain up. And as you can see now, we're going down again. The frustrating part was in 2018, you see there, we were just getting ahead of the game. The green line was on top of the red, i.e. we were getting rid of more jobs that were coming in. And then COVID happened, that made a whole mess of the thing. But if you look right at the very tip of the two lines, they're now converging. So hopefully they'll start to go up again. That's basically stats. That's what the service manager asked me to present to you, and that's what I presented. Those are the factors I've mentioned of why things have changed on what we've done and the making of the public interest report. I'll gladly take any questions I can help with. Obviously, I'm not an expert area in every area of the county, but I'll try my best.
So what was that you said about the Waymark Day?
Yeah, the Waymark, it's nice and simple. I've lost it now. Yeah, the Waymarks these days, there's a bit of a history behind the Waymark. Years ago, they used to be white with yellow. Then we found out that faded. So we asked somebody, a company, they said, yeah, it's because it's yellow paint on white plastic. That's why these days they're yellow plastic, so they don't fade.
Okay.
And obviously, these days, we put the website on it.
Ah, right.
So if you're looking to a style, in theory, there's a Waymark on it. If that style's damaged, oh yeah, right, let's go on the website, report a problem, photograph the style, get sent back to us. I can give the guy, that's what's up with the style. You know, it all helps in making that green line. If the guy's fixing the style, I'm not going to carry an entire style across the field just in case it's all broken. Just got to carry one step across. It speeds up. They can then do X amount of styles a day. And, you know, we're also teaching them these days that, we'll be having for some time, not these days, that if the path needs clearing and you can clear it, clear it. You know, we were talking before about equestrian use. You know, we try and clear bridleways to 3 meters in height, no footpaths to 2. So all that kind of stuff is all factored in to the work we do. And whilst you can obviously see the public need is going up by the complaints we get, we're managing through smarter ways of working, tablets, trying to do parish working. So I'll send the guys out to Maiden Newton, for example, and they will try and get everything they can done in Maiden Newton that day. Then we'll go to the next parish the next day to try and get things knocked on the head quicker, which makes the public experience better on the right of way. There's always going to be nuances like the surface. You know, Mrs. Miggins rings me up. You know, oh, it's flooded. I look at the map, it's called Waterloo Lane.
There is mud in the countryside.
You know, we do our best to try and make the experience the public have out there better than it has been. And hopefully, this time next year, the green line again will be on top of that, and we can actually start getting the level of jobs down. You know, you know, and hopefully, as was mentioned before, with styles, we've not authorised new styles in the countryside for at least 10 years plus. So every time somebody comes to us now and says, I've got a new fence line in. I want to put style in. No, we don't authorise new styles. We can only authorise new gates. What's you saying?
Nikki, you wanted to come in.
Nikki, you might be on mute.
Here I am. So sorry. I'll even let you see my long John Silver. But sorry, I couldn't see your little plastic disc. But that's absolutely fine.
It's just a standard wear mount disc. You must have seen one.
Yeah. So can you tell me? I raised a question a year ago about width of bridges, and your document for width of bridges at that time was effectively too narrow for mobility vehicles to use. So we now have very near to where I live a route which would be very useful for people on mobility vehicles, but will never ever be able to be used by them. So have you now changed that? So you are now putting in wider bridges?
We're putting wider bridges on a case by case basis where they're needed. If you make the local ranger aware of that, then we can try and improve your lot. It's not my lot. We're trying to. We've always installed wider bridges where they're needed. For example, the one that springs to mind immediately is Sir Navis, where it's just a footpath, and because it links the school to the local playing field, there's a 1.5 metre bridge in there, a wider bridge. So we'll ultimately do our best to increase, to make it able to be used by village excuses, by ramps and try and widen bridges where we can.
I mean, once you put in a £25,000 bridge, that the whole route, then, I mean, it's the law. It's under the equality duty that the council will proactively provide for people with disabilities. And thank goodness me, I happen at the moment not to be one of them. Although earlier this year I found it very difficult to get over many styles in the county because the what you call it, the level that the steps up are just too high for people who are not 6'2", and with long legs. So
the bridge was £25,000 worth.
Well, so that's what somebody told me, but
a bridge way over the budget we deal with, to be honest.
Well, okay then. Well, however much it was, I don't suppose you're going to go in there and replace it now.
Where is the bridge?
The bridge is going up to High Hall from Wimborne.
Right, Wimborne, okay.
And it's undulating fields. I mean, I don't know how you make a decision that all routes, unless they're basically very, very steep, should be available for people with mobility vehicles. And, it's very simple. It's very simple changes. I mean, getting rid of styles where we don't need them. How many styles have we still got around the countryside that basically go from one barley field to the other? How many stars have we got that go from one piece of woodland to a nothing? I mean, they're only needed where we need a stock proof. I mean, it's those simple things in life as well as obviously replacing wherever we can styles with gates. And I do recognise that there is a problem there. But wherever we can, we should be making those improvements with the idea that in future years, other infrastructure improvements will come along. I think Paul wants to say something.
Sorry. I think the point Nikki was originally making is that we did have this case somewhere around Wimborne where a shiny new bridge had been put in by the council, which simply did not comply with a quite recently published standard on these issues. And the question went back, well, please, why? And I can't remember off the top of my head what the answer we got, but it was this mismatch between what had been done and the published standards.
It was a difference, sorry, Paul, it was a difference between Dorset standards as written down in a book and the national standards. And that was different.
You certainly look at that, look at that going forward, not a problem. I have seen mobility scooters. I did a very interesting walk around some of the rights of way in this area with a person in a less able scooter. Really was an education watching it. He stood the way they open gates. Which is why now we try and install push gates wherever we can.
Yes.
Just operate the latch and bump it with your scooter and open it. And obviously that's equally relevant for equestrian users as well. They like to bump the gate open rather than pull it toward them.
Yeah, it should be a two-way opening gate, and we should be also fitting all the latches with a yellow covering in order to help people who are visually less able.
Yeah, a lot of them now come with painted yellow catches anyway.
Yes, they do, but you know, it is possible to retrofit existing ones too reasonably easily.
Can I just check, Dave, that I'm right in saying that our policies and what's stated in the road is that we don't replace any stars that are broken, we replace with gates.
Yeah.
But we don't go around and just try and look at all the styles. They're in good nick.
Open not preaching the convertible. Basically, with the style is the landowner's property. In Dorset, we take the view that we repair the style on their behalf because it's quicker for the public. They get a better service. But if a style is broken, we will repair it. We repair it hopefully to a British standard. That is, the British standard, as we all know, is 5709. 5709, but there's no such thing as a British standard countryside. So we'll do our best to make it easy for people to get over. There's nothing worse in the countryside for inhibiting access than a style. So we do our utmost to change them. We have to have permission of the landowner to change them because they're his property. And if he says no, then we'll have to justify a case of why that style is not needed. And it's really difficult to justify a case for my style isn't needed because the only reason you want a style is a stock control. It's really difficult to prove it if he's a landowner to prove it doesn't need a stock control. The same comes the old case where you get a double hedge, where you get two styles only about 6 foot apart. And that's purely because the farmers don't want their animals touching noses, spreading things like foot and mouth. So I think at the moment there's around, the last time I had a survey done, there was around about 16,000 gates and about 8,000 styles. But obviously that number does fluctuate. You know, we do gated schemes, Hazelby Bryan, Sturmis and Newton, where the parish have encouraged the local people, Sturmis and Newton especially, within 5 miles of the village centre, they removed every style. And we've got a gate or a kissing gate in there. Hazelby Bryan, safe routes to school. Hazelby Bryan, out left and right, I installed over 50 gates to allow access to the school. Again, funded at the time from local government doing safe routes to school. Schemes like that happening all the time. We no longer install new styles. If you see a brand new one go in, let us know. Because it's only my department and around 3,500 miles of rights away. Watching everything.
Right, Jim, you've got your hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you. Hi there, Dave. Thank you
Jim,
for presenting the
basketball,
information on the stats. Yeah, nice to see you. Sorry, I'm not there in person to say hi. I just had a question about prioritising actions. And obviously there's the prioritisation hierarchy that puts, things to do with public safety right at the top. And then further down, you've got general obstructions to the pathway. I was just wondering at what point, an obstruction to the pathway that might not be permanent, that might be caused by, a period of inclement weather, becomes sufficiently important that it becomes, something that goes on the action list rather than, something that's just deemed part and parcel of winter conditions and something that, is made good by improving weather in a few weeks' time. It's would be good to know.
Unfortunately, it's all about the judgment to the senior range of the person looking at it at the time.
Yeah.
You go from one extreme to the other. You have sometimes forestry commission vehicles trashing the surface really, really badly, and that's something we can stop. You know, other times, these days, you get lots and lots of extreme rainfall very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Which causes all sorts of problems. You get lots of washout. There's a place in Castleton, in my patch, where if it rains really, really heavily, it becomes like a skating rink. So we have to take measures for that, and that's something I'm looking at improving the surface. But again, I can only improve the surface with landowners' permission, unfortunately. So any schemes like that we look at, so it's done on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the issue is, and it could be any number of issues with the surface or obstructions of any kind.
I mean, yes, yeah. I mean, I spend most of my time walking along various stretches of the Fleet, and obviously this time of year, you get bits that you might not be able to pass from time to time, others that might be, you know, very difficult, even with wellies for a number of weeks. And it's just at what point kind of raising that as a potential issue becomes something that could likely be looked at. If it's,
I always tell the public, anybody who wants to listen to me, the fact that if you find an issue with the right of way, let us know.
Yeah.
Don't assume we know. I'd rather get 15 reports than nobody say anything and somebody slip over and hurt themselves because I don't know. You know.
Thank you.
Fiona, yes, Fiona come first. Sorry, Fiona.
To follow your forestry comment, I found a lot of damage from forestry, and I wasn't sure. I did contact the council to say, is there a time they have to clear it up? So I put it on the MNT, do I? And you will stop that immediately.
And we'll look at it as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, I just didn't get an answer on that. I wasn't sure if the landowner had a certain amount of time. So.
Hopefully you should get an email back from when somebody's been to see it on this.
Oh yeah, no, I do the MNT thing quite a bit, but I didn't get anything on that one.
Well, you said something about every parish as a liaison officer.
Well, most parishes do, yes.
But that's the point, because for the last umpteen years, Tara has been fairly regularly bemoaning the fact that the liaison officer's list is out of date and had large numbers of holes in it. And obviously, there's a problem there in terms of collecting information for the railway and so on. But I was just hoping that you were implying that there had been a miraculous recovery on the list.
So there is some of the stuff that's come back from the road research that is in the road about re-energising and reinvigorating that relationship. So that means that there will be some kind of plan to put in place, because it would be good to have on what the use of the rollers are and things like that. So that is in there.
Simon Christopher, Dorset Councillor, Marshall Bell. Sorry, I like the pigeons. Would you know how many styles, or information, how many styles there are in each?
My quotation of the styles last time.
The reason I say that, could you engage with parish councils and ask them to identify the worst 5% or the worst 10% styles in the parish and get them to come back to you with their thoughts? A, because it's good engagement, and B, because it's very helpful to try and improve things. People who find styles particularly challenging. And if we're trying to encourage all-year tourism and people of all ages and all capabilities walking our footpaths, and tourists as well, isn't that good engagement?
Yeah, this
one action for that. Sorry, in the road. So I'm going to cover that actually. Yeah. You probably don't know that, but
yeah, this is where engagement with the parish and the parish liaison officers becomes vital, because they know their local area and walked better than us. And there are certain parishes. I can only speak for parishes in my patch, I'm afraid. This is going on all over the county. But I can only speak for parishes in my area. The parish of Lye will routinely replace out of their budget 5 styles a year for gates. And other parishes are doing the same. We can go to a parish, say,
because clearly I can go to a parish council meeting where there are 2 parish councillors, both of whom are farmers, one of whom has nothing but gates on their land. And next door you can have perhaps challenging style.
Again, yeah, unfortunately, we can only change the style for a gate with the landowner's permission.
But it would drive forward that agenda.
It would, yeah. And there has been cases where we've done gating schemes and walk around refused, and because he gates all around him, he's eventually given in. Yeah, the grief he gets of everybody else around him. Sorry.
Right, I'll take Chris next, and I see that Jim and they've still got their hands up, so I'll come to you first. Chris.
Something I raised at the last meeting, David, you weren't here, was that there are lots of paths which are waymarked offline, or I've seen it being sort of slight diversions being put in, right? So there's anything changing to the definitive map. So how does this happen, and how can it be fixed?
Well, it's fixed by someone telling us where they are, first of all. I've dealt with one only yesterday, actually, that was waymarked offline. It happens in a number of ways. You know yourself, you used to give waymark this to anybody in one time, and they were put up anywhere. Nowadays, we're restricted to landowners and ourselves to try and make sure that the route is waymarked correctly. With the best will in the world, there's bound to be, unfortunately, mistakes and errors. The definitive map, as you're aware, Chris, isn't the best in the world to start off with. It's not a fine line going between 2 fields. It's a purple line this big. And if I was to transpose it onto the ground, it'd be 100 feet wide.
Well, about 25 yards wide, I think.
Yeah. So we do our best to think of, and only the other day, somebody spotted it, pointed it out to me, and I went out there and I'm currently negotiating with the landowner to get the obstruction removed. He's got 2 choices effectively. He either moves, opens up the definitive line and moves it on to what he thinks is the right of way by diversion order, or he opens the definitive line, more effectively and waymarks it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm taking too much time.
Nicola, you want to come back in?
Sorry, just one more thing about styles. So when you go out there and fix them, would you also, because just about most styles I come across have also got the barbed wire going right up to the stile or even across the stile. So would you actually peel back the barbed wire to, I think, is it 2 meters either side of the stile it should be?
Yep, we'll peel back though. If it's across the stile, we'll more than likely encase it in wood. So you've got like wood, wire in the middle and wood on the outside. Obviously, we don't really need or want to cut the guy's fence because that ruins the tension of the wire and it can affect the integrity of the fence all the way around.
But
so we do our best to move it wherever we can. And again,
the British standard's quite clear that it should be, I think, if somebody, no doubt Paul will do chapter and verse with me, but I think it should be a clear 2 meters.
Yep.
And so,
Actually, to be honest, Nick, I've had more of a problem with electric fences and butting styles than barbed wire, to be honest. That's my major issue.
I mean, again, it's fine. It's fine if you got long legs, then you clear a stile. If you've got short legs, then you tend to brush a stile, and you brush either side of the stile as well. And so, if there's barbed wire around, then
certainly something I can take to the next senior rangers meeting, so we can actually improve that situation for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go back to the British standard, I think it is quite clear. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions. I realise that you and your team have to take on the cutting of verges and roundabouts. What percentage of your time is taken up by that now, and what percentage was taken up, say, 2-3 years ago?
The difference between when we used it in 2013, when we weren't doing verges, and now we are, the teams, we are together as one team.
Yeah.
But the team can do the 2 jobs as separate.
Right.
And the advantage that gives me, around about now, the verge cutting season stopping. So I can transfer some of those guys of the right of way work.
So it's a benefit to you.
It's a benefit.
Okay, that's good.
It's a benefit. It's a benefit. And again, the British climate is such that even in the summertime, it's absolutely howling down. Now we're cut and collecting, the machines don't work that well in the wet. So again, we can transfer staff over. I still have, relatively speaking, the same amount of staff as I did before we did mergers, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. And
they're not more in the wintertime because they're transferred across doing right of way work.
Yeah. And we had a road presentation, Tara. One of the things that came up, a large number of waymarking signs were not present from the highway. Are they being replaced? Is there a program that's being replaced? Do you have them in stock?
Yeah, we have them in stock. We replace them as fast as people do. They get flailed, pinched. I put them in years ago, dripping down the road, come back and it's gone. So we have tactics. Obviously, I tend to run the rule of the landowner gets 3 nice wooden ones, then he gets a metal one which you can't flail.
Right. Okay.
Obviously, the cost implication of a metal sign over a wooden one is a lot.
Yeah.
So we do various things to mitigate people nicking them or flailing them.
Yeah. And one final question. There are reports in the road consultation responses that people got lost on public rights of way. That's something I'd like to sort of flag up and make sure, if possible, we can have additional waymarking signs where people have problems. It's just something I'm highlighting.
It's not part, yeah, the waymarks are supposed to be a guide anyway.
Yeah.
With the festival in the world, sometimes they go skew, they go missing. Hopefully we've cured the fading problem now. But certainly where identified to us, we'll waymark, or more appropriately, actually, in a parish situation, try and get the parish representative to waymark the parish.
Dave, I know you do a fantastic job, and you sometimes get swamped by the number of things coming up on Seaside and MTs. Thank you very much for taking time.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciated. Thank you. We'll now move on to the next item, which is item number 6, BCP Council Green Space Management and Maintenance. Elias, you're on screen. Would you like to take it?
Excellent, Phil. Can you hear me now?
Got you.
Very good. Okay, well, good morning, forum members. I'm only going to say one thing for now, because it's a good bit of news that BCP Council's rights of way team has now expanded. It was just me working for quite a few months, but we're now delighted to say, I should say, to have a new rights of way officer. That's Ellen House. Actually, Ellen is in the call today, so I'm gonna pass you on to Ellen. Ellen's gonna introduce herself, and then Ellen's gonna give a brief rundown of some of the recent items of interest which have been going on in our area. So passing on to Ellen now, if you're there, Ellen.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ellen House. Like Pip says, I recently joined him back in August. I am new to the rights of way. I've never worked in that department before, but it is very different from what I was previously doing. The things that Pip and I were discussing yesterday about what's been happening in the BCP rights of way team is that the rights of way improvement plan is in its final writing. It is now about to be adopted by BCP Council. There is no further consultation or sign off from councillors. It is an executive decision, and the improvement plan will take us through to 2040. So that is to be unified with the local transport plan so that all plans are in sync.
Sorry, Ellen, just before you move on, would I be able to be made a presenter, and then for the next items, I can just share with you Dorset Explorer just to show where Ellen's talking about? That'd be pretty good.
See if I can do that.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks. Sorry there, Ellen.
Oh, do you want me to move on?
Now. Yeah, thanks. That's great. Yeah.
The next item was the Castleman Trailway. Recently had the bridge over the golf course assessed by a bridge engineer. It is already suitable for equestrians. It is now the walking cycling team who are bidding for funds to improve the service and works to the trees to make it much more passable, so we can expect further improvements there. South of the bridge, the path has been surveyed. It is too narrow for equestrians, so as part of the bid, we're looking at putting in passing places to make it more passable. I don't know if Pip wants to add anything else to that.
Not at all, really. It's going to be a conversation that we have just with the walking and cycling team. Obviously, I do understand there is a long-standing ambition to introduce equestrian traffic onto the Castleman Trailway. Yeah, so there's plenty of low-hanging trees all along here, and I know they're talking about, and it's germane to the discussions that you've been having earlier. They're going to be putting in for a bid for improving the surfacing there. So we're going to have this conversation with the walking and cycling team. That obviously whatever gets bid for, I think it's going to have to, we have to consider the future of the Castleman Trailway. Hopefully, having horse riders back on it. So we're going to need to make sure that whatever is bid for is going to be acceptable for the equestrians' use, as Ellen says. Pretty narrow down this bit, has to be said, going towards Broadstone. I think we measure it, what, 1.5 meters, maybe 1 meter in certain places. So there's, yeah, we're going to have to figure out some passing places all along here. And so, yeah, there's definitely scope for improvement there. We're going to have a discussion internally about sort of that bid. That's all I have to sort of add to that. Thank you, Ellen.
The next part is following various planning applications in the area. We are currently looking at securing a public footpath that runs directly along the River Stour in the Parley area. If it is successful, it would mean a 1 mile stretch of the Stour Valley Way that could run next to the Stour rather than away from the Stour. And the last point we've got is, though we're not directly involved, we are aware of an application being made to Network Rail to apply for funds for a feasibility study to implement a crossing at Rockley to get to Holton Heath. I don't know if Pip wants to add anything else to those last two.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Stour Valley Way aspect, I'm sure, is probably going to be of considerable interest there. You can see, well, the Stour Valley Way is in red. It sort of bifurcates either side of the river there around Herne. You've got your option of going either north or south. And what we're looking at, we've got our existing public rights of way, our public footpath in pink, and just this additional route that we really hope to get in at some point between Parley Golf and Red Hill. I've got it in blue here. You can just see it around the edge. Be just a really lovely route. We'd get it in as a footpath. I know that, yeah, I know, Phil, I'm sure you'd like to see this actually going as a brideway, and I think I'd like to see that as well at some point. I don't know whether we could just go straight in as a brideway, but the trouble is would then be leading to a footpath. But again, this footpath, don't know whether forum members are aware of sort of what was planned as part of the Transforming Cities Fund. Originally, we'd hoped for creating a walking and cycling commuting route between this part of Throop and going up to Herne, which would connect this part of Bournemouth with the Herne Industrial Estate around here, which is an employment area. I believe that those works have sort of fallen through due to sort of a shortcoming in funding. So I'm beginning to think, well, probably second best would be if we were to consider maybe trying to get a brideway upgrade along the existing footpath so that we can get cycle traffic going along here. So it's just about exploring all the potential here for introducing cycling, horse riding in this area. Lots of scope there. Pleased to say that this bridge is definitely going in. That's a Stour crossing. So yeah, there's good things happening and potential to be had in this area. So that's some of the main things that we're looking at the moment. But just in addition to these items, you're talking about sort of things like the styles. I think although we don't have like a formal policy for zero styles, I think that is ultimately what we aim for as an authority. I don't think we'd put pressure on parish councils. We only have a couple of those anyway in Christchurch to do that for us. We don't really have enough styles as it is to sort of ask them to do that work for us. I think we will survey, and indeed we have a commitment within our rights of way improvement plan to survey all of our paths to make sure that they are all Equality Act access compliant. So we're going to make sure that, yeah, we're going to get as close to zero, or we will in fact get to zero styles in our area. It'll just depend on sort of capital allocations and sort of how that competes with other things which crop up. But that's always there in the background. Yeah, absolutely, as a really important consideration. Fortunately, yes, we don't have too many styles, but we're going to get rid of them all anyway. So yeah, that's largely it from us, keeping it relatively short, but open the floor to questions gladly received.
Thanks, Pip, and I see that Maddie's got her hand up. Over to you, Maddie.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks. So, are you guys responsible as well for the chap from Dorset Council talking about that the public could go online and report issues with rights of way and blockages and all the rest of it? Is that your remit as well for BCP?
In terms of administering the report function on the website?
Well, no, just are you the team that kind of responsible for maintaining the rights of way as well as what you're talking about here, new improvement?
Well, I would say that almost everything in terms of planned maintenance and improvements do tend to go through us, because at the moment we have, since BCP has been created, a little bit of a change in the maintenance policy. It was they're called Street Scene. They come under a different directorate, environment. They are responsible for the maintenance of all highways. Typically, that would mean that they're also responsible for the maintenance of all public rights of way. But I think the way this is being angled at the moment is that upon realization that we're only legally obliged to maintain public rights of way, which came into being before the 1959 Act, it's essentially taken that because the definitive map was produced after that point, that the public rights of way largely are not actually maintained by us. We essentially yeah, it's a bit of a bone of contention, I gotta say, because we're trying to sort of have a bit of pushback on that, because of course we do have a legal duty to make sure that all of our public rights of way are safe, and so I don't really sort of see how we can not maintain but also make sure they're safe. Anyway,
okay. Can I?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if you need to be sharing your screen, because it's just a bit awkward because I'm on the Teams. If you can stop sharing so I can see.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Sorry. It's just all I can see is a big map in front. So Philip, as chair, where I'm going with this, I believe. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. That rights of way, regardless of where they are in the UK, are for everybody in the UK, not just those in that council area. Correct? Yeah. Nobody disagrees with that, I guess. So where I was going with this, and and maybe you guys aren't the right people, but Phil, perhaps we could put it, the lab would take on this issue. As the Dorset maintenance chapter was talking about the fact that their online reporting system for issues with rights of way and how they can track you know, how they're doing it, clearing those and all of that. The Dorset Council portal is free, is accessible by all to report a right-of-way problem. So if someone came down here from Nottingham on holiday and happened to walk a path and found an issue, they could report it. I have quite a major issue with BCP council in this respect, in that if you are not in their voting catchment, you cannot report issues of any kind within BCP. And I think this is a particular issue for people like myself that live right on a border of a different council area, because I live in Longham. Most of my walks are Millam's Mead and all of that, and I walk through to Tesco's at Kenton for shopping, etc. Now all of that area is within BCP, and I see lots of issues with overgrown, overgrown paths, broken gates, whatever. I have no ability to report those issues to BCP, because if I go on their portal and try and report it, you have to put your address in, and then it says you are not a BCP resident, go away. Essentially,
that's really awful. I didn't realise that, Mandy.
Yeah,
actually,
it is. So,
whenever I use it, is there no way that you can register it as an anonymous user? Because I thought there was that option also.
I can't. If it is, it's not obvious to me. I can't. And I even wrote to the council leader about this. I didn't even get a response back. But because the guys on the Facebook page, when I asked them about it, they said no. You have to be a BCP resident to report an issue within BCP. And I challenged that, saying that the National Highways and Rights of Way network is for all citizens, not just those within. So I think I'm right, because they would have come back otherwise and said, oh yeah, you can do it like this. But it simply won't let you get past that address page. And you know, there's one right of way which is very critical to anyone living in a small village like Longham, and that's the old Millam's Road. I don't know if the rest of the members of the lab will know that. The old Millam's Road before the new Ringwood Road was put in, which was the old road that ran between kind of what is now Ferndown and through to Kinston. That has been shut off to vehicular traffic, and is now an absolutely vital right of way for anyone living in Longham, because the shops in Kinston are our nearest facilities. Ferndown is 4 or 5 times further away. So that right way to get through there is critical to the residents here. It's severely overgrown in places, considering it is actually a public highway. So it would have at once upon a time probably been 8 or 10 meters wide. It's very narrow these days. But I haven't been able to report that issue to BCP because I'm not a resident, and therefore, as far as they're concerned, I don't exist, essentially, using those rights away, which I think is really odd, especially considering BCP being a kind of tourist type destination, that if someone comes to BCP and finds an issue, they can't report it. Sorry, Phil, I know I'm getting on a bit of a soapbox on that one, but it's very, very frustrating.
Yeah, there should also be another option, Mandy. I believe our rights of way email address is available on our website. So I think most people, if they're trying to contact us, they can contact us direct on that if there is such a problem. I'm going to double check that, make sure that it's available on Google search, that we can get direct contact to us. But that is the other way that we welcome feedback from people from anywhere inside BCP or outside BCP. We definitely don't personally discriminate on that. And if it is true that there is that filtering, then I absolutely agree with you, Mandy. I don't think that should be on there at all.
No, and I can assure you, I think it's the same with highways, or if I wanted to report fly tipping, I can't do that because I can't get past the address. Even cycling from where I am up to, what do you call it, the West Howe shopping park. You've got the kind of dual carriageway that goes up, and there's a cycle path along the side which is often overgrown. again, that's a highways issue I haven't been able to report. So, yeah, frustrating.
Can I leave you to take it up with your computer IT wizards and make sure that they can either put something on the internet page to say, if you can't access it because you're not at a BCP address, then you can report it by email to this address, so that it is covered. You make a very valid point there, Maddie. I just take Nikki, she's been waiting a long time, and then I'll come back to you, Paul. Nikki.
Hello. Hi, let's turn the camera on. I just wondered if, in addition to your rights of way responsibilities, are you also responsibility for access on your open spaces? Because, I mean, in BCP, I know that your rights of way tend to be quite fragmented in places, but once you add in the open spaces, I mean, particularly your new Sang and other areas, then it's a far more integrated whole, isn't it? But are you responsible for for issues on those open spaces, or is that another team? And if so, how do you work with them?
It is a separate team. Yeah, we do have open spaces teams which administer that. We just work with them in terms of whenever there is an issue which crops up, then we maintain close contact with them. So yeah, we tend to work alongside each other just fine. If there is an access issue, they will share that with us, and on the contrary, if there is an access issue which we detect that is more an open space issue, then we'll just contact the open spaces team. So yeah, there is a lot of shared interest and work there. Yeah.
Okay, right, thank you.
Oh, you want to come in?
You said something, Pip, about having an ambition to upgrade a path in the Stour Valley to bridleway status, which interests me a lot, because for many years I've been saying there is potential for upgrading some of Dorset's paths to bridleway status. I've always been given to understand that doing that is an absolute nightmare legally. Have you actually researched that aspect of it?
No. To be honest, no. It is just an idea. We haven't done any detailed research yet. It is because it's just so recent that we have had this project fall through for the shared use. We've yet to actually approach any of these ideas in real detail. So it's more or less just an idea which has come off the back of the other sort of path extensions in the area. But well, it's something that I think would be incredibly useful to people at the very least. If it is a nightmare, Paul, then it's just going to have to be a nightmare that we deal with. I'll be interested to find out though if Dorset have tried this before us and found that there's a whole bunch of lessons there for us to learn. Obviously, Dorset benefit from a super experienced and capable rights of way team. So yeah, obviously we'll have a chat with Dorset, and we'll also make use of the Institute of Public Rights of Way and consult them as well about that process. So yeah, it's more just blind ambition at the moment, I'm afraid.
Yeah, the best person to speak to would be probably Graham. I mean, but he's the lead. Rangers generally do the Rangers generally process. There will be lessons learned from them.
Well, I can remember Tara always used to go on about the fact that on Portland there aren't any bridleways. And yes, clearly there are routes that could be designated as bridleway. But I'm led to believe the legal process involved is a nightmare. That it is time somebody did at least understand what the problem is.
Vanessa.
I think Vanessa, we're just about to move on to Vanessa now. So that's probably a good lead into Vanessa. So we go on to item 7, which is the legal record team, definitive map and statement. Vanessa, hello.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. If I just share my screen, then I've just got a brief presentation for you. I'm just going to run through a few figures and then obviously take any questions that come up after that. So starting first with DMMOs, we currently have 184 cases not started. The rate of new applications has slowed significantly in recent months, which has allowed us to start catching up with casework and other matters. And we've also refined our registration processes, which has helped us to save some time there. So that's been quite useful. We have 53 cases in progress, which includes several cases currently with the Planning Inspectorate or waiting to be submitted to the Planning Inspectorate. So if we just have a quick look at those cases, we had a public inquiry relating to the addition of a new route at Melbury Osmond, which was held in Melbury Osmond Village Hall in September, and we're still waiting for the result of that. Last week, we had a public hearing relating to the correction of a route at Church Knoll, and we're obviously still waiting for the result for that. That will take a while. There are no other inquiries or hearings currently scheduled, but as soon as we know any, then I can advise the forum accordingly. 6 additional cases are currently with the Planning Inspectorate. Bridleways 1735 in Crabs Barn Lane at Beminster to be upgraded to a byway open to all traffic. This is being dealt with by written representations. Bridleway 8 Part Cheselbourne and Bridleway 18 Dewlish to be upgraded to byways open to all traffic. This is also being dealt with by written representations. And a byway open to all traffic, Backman Lie at Bailey Drove. That was submitted in October this year, and we're waiting to hear back from PINS regarding that. The 4th one is the upgrading of Bridleway 9 Wentworth Newburgh and part of Bridleway 5 Coombe Keynes Claypits Lane to restricted byways. That was submitted in December 2021. And we have 2 drafting errors. Marnell Footpath 111. That was submitted in September 2021, so hopefully we'll hear about that one soon. And Footpath 48 Thorncombe, which is another drafting error, and we submitted that in August of this year. So PINS currently have a backlog of about 12 months for newly submitted DMMO cases. It does vary depending on what inspectors they have available in which areas, but they are extremely busy at the moment and they're still trying to catch up from backlogs they accrued when the pandemic started. We also have 25 cases in our queue waiting to be submitted. We're limited in this by officer time within the definitive map team and also officer time within the legal services team, because they're very heavily involved in the preparation of the submission documentation. So moving on to the public path orders, this is a much better situation. We have 1 case not started, 34 cases in progress, 9 of which are Town and Country Planning Act applications. 7 of the 34 in progress are awaiting works before order confirmation. We have limited recourse when an applicant does not carry out the works needed on the diverted routes. In some cases, the current definitive routes may not be available and the new routes are not up to the required standards. So basically there's nothing there. In an attempt to tackle this problem, the latest application form for a public path order includes the following clause that the applicant must sign. It says that they should agree to carry out the agreed works within 18 months of Dorset Council requesting that they are completed if the order is unopposed or objections are withdrawn. In the event that the works are not completed to the required standard within 18 months, Dorset Council will reserve the right to abandon the order. The current definitive public rights of way may be enforced if not already available on the ground. And once an order has been abandoned, a new application will be required for any future diversions. So hopefully that will focus minds. We're just basically saying, if they don't do the works within 18 months, we're going to scrap the whole thing and they're going to have to start again, they're going to have to pay again, they're going to have to wait again. So we're hoping that that will add a little bit of weight to sort of any pressure we can put on them. It's just very difficult sometimes to get people to actually do the work that's needed for the process to be completed. And I think, as I've probably mentioned before, the definitive map team's diversified over the last few years, and we now have 3 team members dealing with the public path orders, in addition to other duties. They're not solely focused on that, but we have more people now who can do more things, which has kind of increased our capacity and also the resilience of the team, because obviously there aren't very many of us. So looking at the public path order PINS cases, we had a recent hearing held for a Town and Country Planning Act in Weymouth at Louviers Road. And the outcome was that the order was confirmed by the inspector. When we've advertised notice of confirmation, but there are some outstanding works that need to be done on the new routes. So a notice of coming into effect will be advertised once the works have been completed. And we currently have 2 PPO cases with PINS. Footpath 16 Malcolm Horsey and Footpath 26 Cheselbourne were submitted in September 2021, but no further update. And the second one is part of Footpath 6 Gussish St Michael at Riles. This was submitted to PINS in July 2021. We've had recent contact from PINS regarding the method of determination, but this has not yet been finalised. And we have one other PPO case with the legal team being prepped for submission, and that's Footpath 51 Dorchester and Footpath 6 Winterbourne Moncton, which is on the edge of the Poundbury development and crossing the main road just up from the football stadium roundabout. We're still up to date in all areas other than DMMOs. And as I've said before, the DMMO backlog includes outstanding applications as well as cases waiting to be submitted to PINS for final determination. And that's it, thank you. So if there are any questions.
Thanks. The question was posed by Pippa Lives. How easy is it to upgrade a footpath to a bridleway? Yeah, I've always been led to believe that desirability and need is not a valid argument. So what stumbling blocks, what ease of passage is there?
Well, if you have the agreement of the landowner, it's dead easy. You get the required paperwork in order, everybody signs it, and you're done, basically.
Agreement done. But if we have issues,
if obviously the landowner doesn't want it, then if there is evidence of use or documentary evidence, someone can make an application for a DMMO. If it is the fact that it would be useful, then to some extent the council does have powers to act on a compulsory basis. It can either do a compulsory purchase for the land, or it can do a compulsory creation order, which does require compensation to the landowner. So it very much depends what the situation is, what the land is used for, what the benefits for the public will be when compared with the sort of negative aspects for the landowner. And in some cases it will work. You'll find sort of a method that can be used, and in some cases you just won't, because ultimately if there isn't evidence to support a DMMO application, it does come down to negotiation with the landowner. If the landowner is adamant that they don't want that, then there isn't a lot you can do without spending a huge amount of money, basically.
And where it would fit in your statement of priorities and staff time available to get it onto that process. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Any further questions, anyone? Paul?
On the England Coast Path, Vanessa, the great majority of it is on existing rights of way, but there are 1 or 2 areas where the Secretary of State's designation of Natural England's recommendations is effectively creating a new route. Would that feed through onto a definitive map?
That's an excellent question. It's not something that we've really thought about, to be honest. I think that would take a bit of consultation with our legal team, and what I suggest is that I look into that and get back to you with an answer. I can't give you an answer right now, I'm afraid, but that's a very good point. So if there is something we can do, and there is a mechanism whereby we can put legally created routes onto the definitive map if they're created under some other legal process, so we can look into that, and maybe we could actually do that, which obviously would be very useful for everyone.
Right, thank you very much, Vanessa. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Presentation then. Right, we're moving on to the Dorset rights of way update, the road plan. Over to you, Bridget.
Okay. Just going to live my. I'll have to really whiz through this because I've got another meeting. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the change that, but primarily myself, and I'm the Environment Advice Group Manager, so I'm not a site expert, and Graham Stanley, who is the interim Green Space Manager, have written the book. I just thought it'd be really good just to sort of outline where we are and who's doing what. So you all know the Strategic Outdoor Access Officer, Tara, has now left Dorset Council. And currently, the whole department that we sit under, that Tara sat under, I sit under, and Graham Stanley's team sit under, are going through a review. And so they've decided not to recruit to and to see what that job involves, and instead we shared the load out. One of the big jobs for that role was to deliver the road. That is being catered for. The planning is being done by Graham's team. So we feel that although we're missing part, it's all been covered in some places. We've had to dish that out. So I'm overseeing the writing of the ROIT and inputting Claire's team, Vanessa's team, and Graham's team. When it comes into fruition, the Green Space Manager will currently be the lead of that. And in the review, that Green Space Manager currently got a lot of things associated to it, and so it might have things. Hopefully, and in future, after the Green Space Manager will be the key link to that. But obviously, you've got Vanessa, so it's rather than just one person who used to be Tara. There are many avenues, which might be better than you could get access. So I'm just going to talk about, obviously I'm not going to talk about what the ROIP is, because you all know what the ROIP is. So this is just about the new ROIP. I just wanted to share a few things and then tell you where we are and get to see it. So the content of the new ROIP. So firstly, we did the review of the old ROIP. We set that there were 5 different themes that contain 54 objectives, tons of actions, and reporting on those. I don't know whether that happened, really. I don't think it was. There wasn't plans. It's just a whole load of continual actions. So we have looked at all of those actions and put them on the table, and where we can look at them and bringing things to the new work and bringing forward. But there will be a document say what we've done in the last 10 years. So hopefully that will be helpful. There's going to be a bit on the general background like the last time. So we're setting the scene. We've got updated all the figures. Gemma kindly did all of that. And we talked about the rights of way network and how that links to all the other bits. How the network is all connected. We then look at the needs and priorities of groups, residents and visitors, like that, and the different themes in action. I'm going to talk through some of that now. So going on to the needs and priorities of groups, residents and visitors. So that consultation process, Tara did a lot of that. So it was a 6-week online public consultation, and that includes the public and included a section for landowners. And that ran last year. Tara had lots of individual talks with key organisations like the Landlords British Society, and those, what I can find, will be fed into the Dorset. And we've also worked with the environment. I work with the people, so that's for various bits. So hopefully they're all included. I just put some of those key highlights. That's from the public online consultation, and just let you know we have 900. This is the online survey. Walking was definitely the most popular outdoor recreation to get these physical exercise and maximum want. It was clear that public transportation was difficult to reach the network, and it was interesting that we got the most popular landscapes there, which were the forest and historic access to. And the key issues for landowners were protection of their livestock dogs, and so they were the key things, and maybe so these were the themes and actions that were agreed. There is just to let you know, there is an advisory group to this. So quite a big internal group was set up, but that's got all the people along that way. There's highways, so all those people that any say in the rights of way network, they are on a bigger internal group. So we did some work with them around themes and actions should be. They're different from last time, similar but not the same. So I'm not going to read more about, but they're the 6 themes that we came up with that we important. And probably there's a couple of big differences in this. The last one was about 90 pages long and the end of 30 pages. So it's to make it more succinct. It needs to last 10 years. So we've taken out all the objectives and very direct actions and replaced them with outcomes, less outcomes, but bigger outcomes and high level actions really. And what we're going to do is to put delivery plans, which will be more flexible and be at the moment, and that will help with the funding. And in the old work, it's a thing like we'll make a leap. That's so specific, and actually, in 10 years we've gone from leaflets to a lot of digital, so it sort of gets round that back. So the delivery plans will be a really useful addition, led by brain standard teams. So theme 1, so I'm just going to go through the different themes. So theme 1 was about mapping and understanding the network. This is primarily about the legal record, so Vanessa's area, these have right flats, theme, but I just thought I'd put out in each theme what public consultation said, and 43% will understand the statement is, and only 30% give it's widely needed to use. So so opportunities for us to make people aware of that map network and to bring them up. Theme 2, maintaining the rights of way. It was clear, and it is clear from using the seaside and things, that people don't know the difference, struggle to see the difference between what is maintenance and what is improvement. And we thought in this ROIT, we need to be really, really clear what's maintenance. This theme is all about maintaining the rights of way. what is our responsibility and what a private landowner do, and making that clear. So we also took on board what the landowners said and what their key issues was. Obviously, that gives us an answer for what the duties are for us to do. And again, those key issues were about protecting livestock, people leaving gates open, litter, cyclists, wild camping, sufficient management network, and some of that signage and waymarking that is missing. So I've just put down the opportunities. Obviously, the road goes into more detail than this. I've just highlighted things really, but that's about reinforcing that countryside code so that given the dialogue between Dorset Council and policy and things like that, and that's stated in the so the public response to maintaining the rights of way. So 43% stated they did not have no problem, even though we seem to get tons. So that's interesting for us, and those are reported issues. So maybe there's a bit of something to do with that. These key issues were similar to last time, actually, in the lower overgrown vegetation, or signage, poor condition of infrastructure, and past surfacing. Those don't change much from 10 years ago, really. But that's and some of the opportunities for that was about providing more communication, problem, and more communication with our landowners. And also, one key thing is that we know in the previous row, having condition surveys really. And in some ways, we kind of get conditions using seaside reporting tool. That's really vital. But actually, we need to develop a better system for our development, carrying out those regular conditions baseline. Actually, that comes into our sort of partnership work. So moving on to theme 3, improving and connecting the rights of way network. So this is all about improvements. So we really define what's maintenance and then what is improving. Just put a statement there about what we consider as improving. It was great to see that in our consultation we had 340 map suggestions. I put what types they are. There's 100 new routes suggested. There's 136 improvement of routes. There were more suggestions than that, but we had filtered through that and taken all the names on. So this is just sort of bringing us down to what are actual improvements. But we have passed all the maintenance ones on to Graham's team so that they can cross-reference to see that they're on seaside. So that was a useful thing. It's all on. Gemma Conky did all of that work. She was absolutely fantastic, and that is now all on the GI for us to go through. That hasn't been gone through, and it won't. It will be an action to do some priority listing going forward, but it won't say what's our priority. It's about now we've got all this information to do something, but it's information we haven't really had. We've talked about a lot of this today. Key challenges relating to network improvement, hard surfacing, multi-user road segment. There are top ones. There will be statements in there. I'm not going to talk about them today. Probably a massive discussion on that. But that is where we're going to state our and developing new network improvements. You know, it's all been on a really ad hoc basis. People on councillors get in touch, communities get in touch, and that's really great. But actually, we need a new story. We need to have a story and evaluation that becomes fair and transparent, and people know where they're going. That is really, really, and that is the point of being launched to us, because we just can't carry on. That is fair to communities as well, and it involves lots of things, lots of criteria, and all things, so we can sort of get that priority list. But of course, you'll have sight of that. Access land, it's really great. I have now been passed all the great report on that, and that will be in it. And like I said, that's a sort of supporting document to grow it, because it lists out some of those priority areas. And we can put that in. We just need to overlay all this information to see what. And those are our opportunities: clear, transparent process, position for past servicing multi-use routes so that everybody is happy. Use information to formulate a priority improvement list for the network, and working together to access funding. That's key. We don't have tons of money to do improvements. Wayne's team have lots of money to do improvements. We just need to work across teams. Our money is spent on maintenance. Improvements really to get money. Tara did bring us that, and we would still look to do all of that. There's other, that hasn't been lost. We would still do it. Theme 4 is knowing where to go. That's all about information and infrastructure to get people out and explore and use the network. Our consultation said the majority felt that where the path leaves a road, it's not clearly signposted. Long distance routes, promoted routes, trailways were the most popular, and many wanted more information on where to go. So, the opportunity for us is to provide better information, get more people. Theme 5 was about providing a more accessible network, and we have talked today about a bit disability, and obviously there are particular regard to the accessibility of the rights of way. We have 42 people, 2 of those have sight impairment, respond to our public consultation. It said the top places they visited was Woodland and Hester Strip. They used the network for walking, relaxing, there's flex guides, and then pastoral reasons. But the key barriers were path surfacing, poor condition of gates, vegetation overgrowth, and lack of links to local facilities. So again, when we're doing our sort of priority list, we need to look at that, and also we need to cross-reference whether people with disability put into our map. So there is a bit of cross-referencing. Ethnic minorities, there was a very poor response in that, so we need to work with the groups to enable that to be fed into our future plans, even if they're not fed into the ROA. We acknowledged it with our improvements that share information. We need to talk to different user groups. Older people, so this is 65 and over, obviously there's a growing, Dorset's got a growing population of older people. We have 281 respondents. Majority use it to access their local facilities. Again, walking, relaxing and winding is left side for the top reasons. Interestingly, 85% chose not to use public transport, yet bus passes. And the top barriers were vegetation, path surfacing and road separate. Children and young people, we had to put that to under 35. We have 27. Again, similar things, use Woodland path and Heathlands, interestingly, as their top place. Walking, there's flex size, mental health and socialising the top, and road separate, all signage on way marking and issue. And the majority of use digital to understand the network. So the opportunity for us is to make the accessibility a priority for all network improvements, working with the correct people and organisations to areas. And the last thing was partnership delivery. Dave talked about this, other people have talked about this. It's only possible to work in partnership. I'm a massive advocate. Everything I do before I put council best things achieved by that. Key people and organisations for delivery. We think the rights of way liaison officers, Dorset Local Access Forum and Climate Management Council are several key. And the opportunity is to sort of refresh how we do that. So we could wait from just maybe solely one person, that contact to we asked the lab to do, because maybe there's a different relationship to help us on this. Sorry. Okay, so monitoring and reporting back. So really important that we're going to have this delivery plan to accompany the plan. So the plan should go out today. The delivery plan will be moving vehicle. Monitoring will be then it's going to produce an annual plan, and that will be really helpful, I think. So so you can see that movement and what's happening. Timeline to production. So I've just about finished what I'm doing and what with friends' input, and went to Giles to a proofread yesterday. So we're hoping it can go out to the advisory group I talked about, and then to the Dorset lab. But that's where we're putting it out to. And then between January and February, there's still lots of supporting documentation to be finalised, delivery plan to be written. Then we'd look to go to Dorset Council for approval and adopt in April, and then out communications in April. That's it.
Thank you very much, Bridget. And, it's good to see the document coming to fruition, and with Tara working on it as well. You know, Tara will sense that all of her best wishes.
So you're saying you will be putting a draft in front of us next month, and you would like to have our views on it back by
January. You will be given time to read it. It is a lot shorter, but you won't have all the supporting documents. That's all I'm saying.
Because maybe we might need to think in terms of scheduling an extra lab meeting.
You've got me right there. I've already got it on my list. So yeah, we'll need an extra meeting, I think, to sit down and discuss a very vital document.
I will confirm the dates exactly, because I just need to. All I haven't done is check for the council, because obviously we've got that bit back. We have to work backwards. So, but we do need to give people time to feedback to it.
When you say January, do you mean towards the end of January?
Can I get back to you? You will have enough time to do it.
Okay. You know, so if we schedule in a meeting prior to that, I think that's the best way forward. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Bridget, I'm going to have to go because I'm going to miss my bus if I don't. Just one really quick question. That time review and consultation that you set out there, you're not consulting any wider. So, for example, not consulting with Ramblers and British Law Society.
Well, we didn't know it to just come through the lab, and then you could right, and that way, or not. It just takes an awful.
I know that means, because I do think wearing my Ramblers hat, because we don't come here actually representing. I know I am from Ramblers, but I don't represent Ramblers on this. I just represent walkers and parish councils. That's where my interests are. So I think, judging from what's been said at area footpath committee meetings, Ramblers are expecting that they are going to be consulted. Okay. So I'm not suggesting you adjust the timetable, but I am suggesting that you consult at least the statutory groups that get consulted about diversion orders, for example, that they get consulted at the same time you consult the lab. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I must confess, I had assumed, based on Tara's earlier words, that the draft that you are now preparing would go out on public consultation generally, rather than just to us. Perhaps I misread what she was saying.
Well, I just need to look at that, whether we do have to do that. Obviously, that takes, it just adds to the process and adds to the time. But can I come back to you on that? Because I need to see whether we, I'm not disputing about the statutory organisations, but for the benefit of going back to the public who've already into something and we've taken that on board. That's all. Because otherwise there's a whole another raft of stuff on public that come in, and we're dealing with a document that is needing tweaking, not completely right. So that's really worried. But I can come back.
So we'll look to have an additional meeting in January where we can sit down, look at the road, discuss it in detail after we've had the time to peruse and look at. Yeah.
Quick question. I was really impressed with the mapping efforts at trying to do it. 10-year plan. Is the prioritised map going to be fixed for 10 years, or are you thinking of putting a system in whereby we can continue? Because I mean, I think we failed you in terms of getting real consultation more widely, I'd say.
No, so the 10-year ROIC, you know, that's why we did outcomes. So we haven't, the principles are all there, but the delivery plan, the delivery plan would be on a 100-year basis to look at what are the improvements for this year and next year, so that it's removable.
So we can continue to feed in, can we?
Absolutely, and that is and that's why we talked about having that scoring mechanism, isn't it? This is what we're going to do for the next 10 years, because there might be different priorities come around the corner and different funding streams. It's not always about, you know, we try to do it on a unique basis, but you know, there's lots of criteria.
And from that point of view, I would plead for an opportunity map, because as you say, funding comes up. There were two new funds created in the strategic planning meeting this week. Maybe a low priority for the village path, but suddenly you've got a fund there.
Yeah,
the fact it's really nice to know there's a need.
Yes, so we're trying to go more that way, really, and be a bit more data driven. You know, really, that's how you generally get money and things. You know, Wayne's team do it very, very well.
Yeah, sounds great.
Right. So we have an action there to put another meeting in, and also contact all statutory user groups, consultees, whatever you like, so that we get the widest amount of information coming back to us, so that we can make a decision that is going to be the best decision for users. Thank you very much indeed, Bridget, for that. Item number 9. I'm conscious of time and the fact that my vice chair has had to leave. She was going to speak to the item on the AONB. Do you want to take the local nature partnership now, Fiona, or do you want to move it to the next meeting? But you'd like to take it now?
Yeah, like 2 minutes.
That's fine by me. Yep, so totally fine.
Yeah, I circulated the paper that I took to the local nature partnership, and the local nature partnership were very receptive to the fact that if they're going to promote wellbeing and health through access to the countryside, they have to promote access, or jointly promote access, as well as biodiversity that Nicky mentioned as improving our experience of using that access. So it was all positive, and agreed to use the LAF when things about access were being discussed, or such as National Trust's new access, encourage members to use the LAF to join up. They're also keen that the LAF could help them to join up BCP and Dorset Council. We've got where some common again. Aims, the issue will be about follow through. I continue to sit on the LNP, but and now seem to have a left as well, so I'm happy to take issues.
And that is a really good step forward, and I see that it's recommended that there's closer collaboration between the Dorset LAF and the LNP partnerships to ensure the benefits of people and nature, and then you've got some specific comments underneath. So I think we'd all support that unanimously as its objectives, and thank you very much for writing the paper and the work you're doing on it. greatly appreciated. I'll move on to item number 10, the work programme. What we'll do, we'll shelve that until we have our next meeting, which will be in January. So basically we can look at the work programme when we've had the input from the ROIT, and then we can make a better decision at that later time, which is only going to be in a couple of months' time, at the very most.
If, as part of the minutes of this meeting, Gemma includes an updated actions list, that would give us a starting point for that debate.
Yeah, a bit like I did the last. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right, so then dates of the next meetings. I will leave the dates for March, July and November as they stand there with the two options, because I think in 2 months' time we'll have a better clarity where we're going rather than trying to do something off the hoof now.
Next year's diary as well. We'll have next year's diary.
We'll have next year's diary, and we might have some events that fit into it. And rather than set something in stone now and people think, oh, hang on, you know. But what I would say is that in the case of the March meeting, just pencil in the fact you might be having a meeting on the 23rd or the 20th. And then we can, is that, what's the date? Right, that's surely the 30th, isn't it? 23rd and 30th. 23rd and 30th, not 20th. So March, it'll either be the 23rd or the 30th of March. So if you sort of try and keep those 2 dates free, and then we go and see which meetings serve us all best. Unless we've got anything pressing, I will leave any other business at this juncture and carry everything forward to January, where we can have a full discussion, unless there's anything absolutely pressing at the moment. So I'm going to thank you, Gemma, for the work you've done today, the mammoth minting task ahead of you, and I'll close the meeting at 1:30. Thank you, everybody.